drop the beat.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never. 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 Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start posting the link in the other social media like Discord, Twitter, etc., etc. We will have a show today for you that'll probably be fun. I'm not going to lie. I am a little pissed today. I'll just go ahead and describe why. So, I'm not trying to be too dramatic, but basically there is something cringe that happens with social media influencers, which is basically they go into disaster situations like the floods in Texas, and they make themselves the center of the story. But I don't think that's what's happening with Donut Operator, conservatarian Texas-based influencers who have gone out into the floods. I don't think that's what's happening. Mainly because Donut Operator was a first responder. He was law enforcement. If what happened during the hurricanes is during Hurricane Ian, that was close enough to me that we fundraised and we went and we helped out and all that kind of stuff. Now we're going to take a look at his tweets and see if there's any like cringe virtue signals in the middle of the actual like awareness campaign fundraising and all that kind of stuff. But effectively, like, I have no problems with what Donut's doing. Effectively, like, I think we should do more of what Donut is doing. And the only thing that you could point out to be hypocritical is the fact that the Trump admin has cut, allegedly, FEMA and National Weather Service, and that could exacerbate climate related issues and emergencies within the country. So you could say, oh, Donut's a fucking piece of shit. Sorry for using so much profanity so early, but he's a piece of shit for supporting the Trump admin who helped exacerbate the situation by cutting funding to National Weather Service and FEMA. And I'm okay with that. That's like a perfectly valid criticism. But Stephen woke up today or yesterday, realistically, and chose violence and said one of the spiciest and dumbest, I'm just going to be real, one of the spiciest and dumbest fucking tweets I've seen from him in a while. And I think it's worth discussing about. I might even talk to him about it. I might be too sensitive about it. But we're at least going to talk about it today. Because I think what happens too, this is the other thing that I'm worried about, is that orbiters just become extensions of their host orbit. I would think it would be difficult to find Mike from PA or Denims or Frogan explicitly criticizing Hassan Piker, and I don't want that. I don't want that kind of relationship. If I'm going to be friends with Steven, if I'm going to be an orbiter of Steven, like knowing all of his bullshit foibles and vices, then I want to be able to say, hey, this is fucked up. And I don't want that to be a big deal. So we'll be discussing that momentarily. I'm kind of waking up. So I got my caffeine. I think I took my pills. I posted to Discord. I need to post to YouTube and to Twitter. Sorry. Bear in mind, there's lots going on the home front as well. Then let's go to Twitter. Let's go to YouTube for the other politics channel. But anyways, we'll break it down. So I see chats popping off a little bit already. Don't worry, I'll be reading your chats and breaking it down. Excusame. All right, let's check in with chat. So, world-renowned GeoHound says, Connor, good morning. I caught the start of your stream. Good to see you, world-renowned GeoHound. And so it says, yeah, what Destiny said was fucked up, but Donut Operator was cringe. Well, let's see what he did that was actually cringe. Sun Patty says, good morning, everybody. Brandon Zero says, Connor, praise the God Emperor. Good to see you, brother. That's kind of where I am. Steven chose straight up Cornage. Spelled like the god of blood. Thank you. I needed some comic relief. Also, I need to I need to pick some content for later. It's not like we don't have a docket with plenty of other stuff. It doesn't feel particularly fresh. Like it doesn't feel like it happened within the past, like, I don't know, 96 hours. But we have Destiny on Decoding the Gurus. We got the Bush Obama USAID collab, which is probably only a few minutes. Vosh talking about Mehdi Hassan in reference to the Communist Party, which I actually think would be interesting to break down far left freaks. Vance versus Joe Rogan. That's probably old. It might be old but gold. I don't know. Andrew Wilson versus Apostate Prophet. Old but gold. Vincent James versus Nick versus AJ versus Gavin Newsom. I'm a little burnt out on Nick Fuentes. We'll obviously be covering him later in the week just because it seems like everybody covers Ethan Hassan Destiny. Our rotation is more like Hassan Destiny Vosh. Hassan Destiny Vosh Nick. Hassan Destiny Vosh Nick. So it's not EHD. It's Hidgen. It's Hidgen. We have Hidgen instead of EHD. Then Glenn debate on trigonometry. Don't remember what that was. If it was Glenn Douthat, that would be actually, or Douthat, as somebody corrected me in the comments. That'd be interesting. Then Simone and Malcolm Collins, apparently some pro-natalist dissident right-wing freaks, which could be fun, but I just don't think it's going to be algorithmically relevant. Brandon Zero says, wasn't the hypocritical argument was about that Donut did to the LA fire shit? Now that is actually an okay point, Brandon Zero. That's actually, that's a decent point that I'll try to put into my calculus, because if I do remember, Brandon Zero and, or not Brandon Zero, Brandon Herrera and Donut Operator were making fun of the Palisades fires. Now, truth be told, I was making fun of the Palisades fires a little bit, but I think the reason why is because the Palisades are disproportionately rich. California has been accused of fire mismanagement for a really long time, like not doing controlled burns, and the forestry over there allegedly sucks. Now, the truth of that, I have no idea. Same way where it comes to the cuts to emergency preparedness in reference to FEMA and in reference to the National Weather Service, there's conflicting information. The National Weather Service itself says that it's staffed the way that it normally does during inclement events, and they posted 4 or 5 emergency alerts related to flash flooding that would have been their normal practice. And then when it came to the state response, the states actually came out, Texas came out and said, and the local municipality came out and said that effectively, like, they did get the warning systems, but because of the predicted rainfall, they didn't evacuate. And then also they thought about doing an early warning system for that area where effectively you would have like air raid sirens, but they didn't do it because of the cost and how infrequently it happens. So I don't know what to do with that information. It seems like the feds did what they normally do and the states didn't respond. And the states didn't respond because they wanted to save money. So can you make a narrative about fiscal conservatism getting people killed? Maybe. But also at the same time, don't we live on a dirt ball spinning in the void of space? Aren't that fucked up shit isn't going to happen eventually? I don't know what to do with that info. I do know what to do with Stephen being an asshole, though. Fung Dark says, there's still vacancies in the National Weather Service here from Doge. Yep. Wowman542 says, I saw Nebraska Steve in the title and came running. What I miss? Oh, just making fun of girls drowning, that kind of thing. Possum Nation says, the one Destiny tweet I saw was just dumb and not even funny or creative. Pointless tweet. Well, it's getting attention, right? That's like the one thing that I'm actually wondering about. Hi, Kay. Good morning. And I'm wondering about if it's a marketing strategy. If effectively Nebraska Steve has just piss off the whole internet every now and then just to, as a marketing strategy. Ensort says, how Steiner dispatched a scout lance to investigate the concept of God Emperor. No such thing exists. I'm too early to translate that. HDVN, exactly. John Kennedy says there's a difference between talking shit about a politician or a politician's office and intentionally saying spicy stuff purely to rage bait people into views for your channel. Well, John Kennedy, you do say that. However, like, I think Hassan does that. I think Steven does that. I think that Donut can be quite callous when it comes to people getting killed on his channel. Brandon Herrera, as an example, people were bringing it up, how sensitive he was being about the floods. But Brandon Herrera did a meme video about the trans shooting in the Christian school almost within 2 weeks of the mass shooting happening. There's just like weird shit like that. Now, Brandon Herrera, to be clear, because I watched the video, I thought it was in poor taste. I thought it was repulsive, but he doesn't make fun of the victims of the crime. If anything, he exclusively makes fun of the shooter, which I thought was okay. I still found it like gauche and kind of repulsive, but he wasn't making fun of the victims of the mass shooting. Dank Brandon says it's hilarious how many folks are claiming the storm was unnatural, but if a Dem had done what Trump has done, it would be because God was punishing us. Well, let's be real. If Biden had cut National Weather Service or cut FEMA, nobody would care whether or not there was some nuances of the situation that actually made it so it wasn't his fault. They would be like, yeah, it's definitely his fault. And that would be the dominant narrative. Christian Blair says, yeah, Donut is a MAGA chud and dipshit, but I don't know if this is the best look for Destiny. I don't think Destiny cares about the best look. I think he cares about attention. To start shit with him, and he is out there helping people with the floods. Yeah, it's terrible optics, but I don't know if that matters. Fung Dark says, oof, well then you can't get mad at making fun of this flood because the exact thing has happened before. I mean, I can get mad. I don't think I've ever gone like lol, family burned to a crisp in the Palisades fire, laugh my ass off, bunch of sodomite heathen freaks in California, lol. I never said any of that shit. Like, I know I just said it, but I was saying that to point out the fact that I never saw that or never said that. Unork says, hell yeah, I was watching Pisco and I thought, which Counterpoints was streaming? And bam, here we are. Yeah, I'm 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. I'll be here. Artie's Corporate Fiction says, hello there, fellow kids. Hello. How are you? Well, QC says, good morning, Connor in chat. Here's the problem with the Palisade fires had more to do with state regulations and allowing them to use water from the ocean because the salt would kill plants. Yeah. Andrew JD says, Donut being hypocritical for sure, but helping is helping, so I'm not going to jump in on him for going out and lending a hand that needs it, for people that need it. Yeah, let me, Gen X says, I'll be right back. Cool. John says, yo, Connor, you hear there is no Epstein list anymore? Yeah, that's pretty funny. I don't think it's the marketing at all. He has a history of zero filter hesitation. Sure. I didn't see Destiny post anything about Brandon Herrera, just Donut, given that he's the one that lied about him in his interactions. Maybe. Making fun of a dead body, even a shooter, feels strange. I mean, I make fun of Gaddafi, and he got stabbed in the butt, which is not very nice of me to do. But to be fair, Gaddafi did, suicide bomb an airplane in 1986. So, fuck him. Hope he's burning in hell. Sapient Green says, I heard some Fox News snowflake was complaining that this was being politicized, which is hilariously hypocritical. Yeah. Every tragedy is politicized to one degree or the other. The Trump admin and conservatarians will politicize tragedies, and they'll highlight the failures of government in order to justify additional cuts. Democrats and progressives will highlight the failures of government and say that we need more government. Almost every single public tragedy has had that. Wowman says we need about 70% more Nebraska, Steve, so online politics discussions can start healing again. Oh, no. Sin Patty says, it's my birthday. I'm a year away from 30. All right, I got to sing. I've sung for other people. I got to sing for Sin Patty. So, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Sin Patty. Happy birthday to you. Yay. And many more. Death Lily says, at Counterpoints, the problem is Chud's conservatives taking accountability for their side. Destiny's tweet is horrid, but in total, it's just a reflection of what conservatives say. Sure, but is doing bad behavior, like doing bad behavior. So, for instance, I'm going to give you a very lame analogy, and then I'm actually just going to start reviewing the tweets so we can all get on the same page, or at least fight to get on the same page. And then we'll pick the content for the day. So let's say that my opponent, I'm trying to think of something. In elementary school, as an example, there was this kid named Harold, and he was a bully. This was at the French school, and he bullied everybody in the class to the point that, in French school, they don't stop bullying. When I completed to my parents, and then my parents complained to the school because he was bullying me, but he wasn't just bullying me, he was bullying everybody else in the class. And so effectively the French teacher said, well, unless there's actual violence that results in people going to the hospital, we let kids figure out the social dynamics of stuff. And from an American perspective, we were like, what? Like, why don't you like set expectations about good behavior? But eventually we just accepted it. And what happened was Harold was such a fucking bully that we were playing like in the north, you have like clods, like dirt clods. So what happens is it'll rain in a cold environment, and then you'll have like mud clods where effectively you have like almost a rock, but when you hit somebody with it, it explodes into a puff of dirt. Well, what Harold was doing was he was picking up dirt clods that had rocks in them, and he was hitting the entire class of like 20, and he was picking up rocks and hitting intentionally 10 kids. So what eventually ended up happening was everybody picked up dirt clods that had rocks in them and then started fucking pelting Harold until he cried. Like literally 10 kids spontaneously decided that they were sick of Harold's shit and they beat the fuck out of him with rocks. And what ended up happening was Harold became less of a bully because we reciprocated. But after that, we didn't continue to bully Harold. We went back to normal. Like we reset the social expectations where Harold was no longer allowed to bully everybody and Harold became chill, so we didn't pick on Harold. So the reason why I'm bringing up this kind of like this social dynamic is I don't have a problem with some level of reciprocity in order to get people back to normal, but I feel like in the internet day and age, we're not sufficiently socially complex in order to get back to normal. We just use, like, let's say in this metaphor, conservatives are throwing rocks. Steven throws a rock, and then everybody's pelting Steven. Well, we don't return to a normal where everybody stops throwing rocks. People just use the last rock throwing incident as an excuse to continue throwing rocks. So I don't know what to do about that. I really don't. Sin Patty says, y'all are going to beat out my family. Good. Good. I hope I beat them to the punch in reference to singing your birthday. First wave negativity. So what's even the bad Destiny tweet? The NordVPN tweet was kind of funny. That ended up being funny and pissed me off that it was so funny. It pissed me off that I was mad about the original tweet and then something really fucking funny happened. It was actually infuriating. Sin Patty says, I've heard once you turn 30, your knees go out. Joke's on me. I've been dead for a decade. Well, you got to lift weights. That's what you got to do. Boondock says, one of the big things that upsets me about Donut Operator, though, is that he was very callous during the California wildfire. So how am I supposed to have any empathy from this perspective? I don't think you empathize with Donut. I think you empathize with the people who were actually hurt. Christian Blair says, you and the class should have jumped his ass. Well, we kind of did eventually. John Kennedy says, were Donut and Herrera making fun of the people that had their houses burned down? Probably. Nope. So Destiny focusing on the perceived moral imbalance is just signaling that he's one of the good guys. Interesting, John. I presume that they did make fun of rich people losing their houses, but I actually don't have a tweet. So maybe I'm making presumptions about things that don't exist. Boondocks says, I mean, just think about all the people, including Donut Operator, that were saying horrendous things about the California wildfires. If they don't, yeah. So we're kind of having contradictory things here. John Kennedy and Boondocksian are saying that different things about what Brandon Herrera and Donut Operator said about the Palisades fire. All right, chat's popping off, so I'm going to stick with chat for a moment, but I promise we'll start reading things. Wowman says, based lesson in mob rule. I have a newfound respect for French schools. Oh, yeah, that's the interesting thing about the French. A lot of people think they're wussies, and they are, in reference to like military warfare or imperialism. A lot of the French are wussies. But when it comes to school, they actually have like a very laissez-faire, violent balance of power. It's actually really interesting how big of wussies French people are nationally compared how tough they are individually. Like them getting into a fist fight, them getting into a scrap was nothing. Like you talk too much shit, you're gonna get hit. Like that, it was kind of wild. And teachers would not, like, if somebody was talking some crazy shit and then a kid walked up to another kid and just popped them in the mouth and that was the end of it, teacher didn't do shit about it. They would literally watch it while eating their lunch and smoking a cigarette And then as long as nobody was going to the hospital, they would let it happen. Kind of crazy. Sapien Green says, don't kill Harold, make him better by pain. Yeah, exactly. Eric Dom says, I'm sure somebody already said that, but happy St. Patty's Day. True. Christian Blair says, clip it. Connor advocates stoning based LGBT streamer. Fuck you. Andrew JD says, lost a lot of respect for Donut because his constant referencing to SCOTUS precedent like Penn versus Mims made me think that Donut constitutionality. Now he glazes Trump, so obviously that's not true. Yeah. Brandon Zero says, wait, was Harold gay, with stoning and all, because you guys could have easily just punched him? Yeah, what if we did a gay hate crime and we didn't even know? All right. Let's there's still some more questions in chat, but there's some people who are confused about what I'm even talking about. So let's go ahead and break this down. I'll try to make it a segment. I don't know if I'm going to talk long enough to make it a segment, but let's go ahead and give it a shot. So I'll do an intro and then we'll get cracking. Let me not that one. Present, share screen, add audio, entire screen, add audio, get that screen there, add to stage, take it away from stage. All right, let's do a little intro. So, hi guys. My name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and a never Trump Republican. And I'm a little pissed today, but I'm trying to dial in how angry I am because I am waking up. So effectively what happened within the past, I don't know, week or so, is there was a flash flood in Texas. And the narrative surrounding it is that there was incompetence at the federal level where Trump has cut the National Weather Service and has cut FEMA. And so as a result, this could be, technically the fault of the federal government. However, there's conflicting information where the federal government put out the warnings that they normally do in reference to flash floods and emergency conditions. And it was actually the states that failed to respond by not evacuating the area and also by not putting in an alarm system in an area that was prone to floods. As a result, flash flooding did occur, and there's roughly 40 to 70 people that have died, and 30 of them were young children who went to a Christian summer camp, all girls under the age of 10, which is actually horrid. It's horrid to think about 30 young people losing their lives in a senseless way to a violent natural incident that would be totally they wouldn't be able to understand what was happening by the time they were dead. And then also people desperately looking for their children and unable to find them because they're covered under 30 feet of mud and they drowned. Actually horrifying if you think about it for 30 seconds. The reason why we're talking about it is because there's some conservative and libertarian creators who are a part of the gun community who started participating in emergency situations. And then Stephen Bonnell, Destiny, I'll just say it, friend and person who I collaborate with creatively, he said something that was repulsive about it, which caused an online drama. And we're kind of discussing those dynamics. So let's go ahead and take a look at Donut Operator, who is one of the conservatarian gun guys. And we're going to see if he's doing anything cringe in reference to the emergency response. So Brandon Herrera, very large gun YouTuber, says, Donut Operator and I spent 4th of July night out with West Vertle, Texas in Caravelle, Texas, talking with first responders along the river and getting a feel for what is needed on the ground. It is hard to express the level of devastation. The pictures don't do justice to the scale of it. The biggest takeaway of the night is how scattered the comms were. It was the biggest complaint everyone had. Most were handed high-tech radios that didn't work, and there is little to no cell signal anywhere. If you're planning to come out and help, my biggest piece of advice is to have a reliable shortwave communications and, of course, bring more supplies than you need just for yourself. It's bad here, lots of dead, and plenty more missing, so keep prayers coming, and I'll post where to help as soon as it's clear what the best way is. Whatever. So looking here, this is about 26 feet of flash flooding that happened at 4 in the morning. Obviously 26 feet, most roofs are around like 10 feet. This looks like maybe 12 feet because it might be like a garage, but most buildings are around 10 feet. So you got to figure the water itself would be at the second story. So unless you climbed onto the roof or climbed into the attic almost immediately, you could be drowned inside your own house. Here's some cars swept away. Here's some emergency vehicles. And let's go ahead and continue because this was a retweet from Brandon Herrera, or Donut Operator, excuse me. Donut operator says ransom supplies out to Care County with Brandon and met up with West Vertle. This is right around the corner from Camp Mystic, where 20 to 25 little girls went missing. Miles and miles of cars, trees, and homes piled on top of one another. First responders told us, excuse me, it's a huge holiday weekend. There were hundreds out of towners staying on the riverbank, which means they really can't give a solid count on how many people are actually missing. The community is going to need support in the following days. Again, this is totally inoffensive. If anything, this is what I think social media creators should do. They should do it even more aggressively. Like, no offense, but like social media personalities, they get online, they talk shit about random events in the world, and then they make tons of money doing so. Like the successful ones make easily six figures, and some of them are making seven figures. So why not, if your job is cool and you make tons of money, why not respond to emergencies in your community and help fundraise and actually participate in, these kinds of events? I don't find this gauche at all. I actually think that this is what any decent citizen should do. So, excuse me. Update from the flooding. We spent the day in Center Point, Texas, helping to look for bodies. Last I heard, they could still use extra hands tomorrow. I think we're going to help the fire department with fundraising. They lost a lot of their essential equipment to the flood and their ability to do their jobs just a week or so before the annual fundraiser. More details on that when we set it up, but it seems like a great way that we can help out in a meaningful way. It's a terrible situation, but it's moving to see how much the community has come together to help. So destroyed house, destroyed fields, some tractor or some part of a trailer up in a tree, and then a teddy bear in the mud. I could understand there was like another picture of a sneaker that people found gauche. So the teddy bear in the mud, I get it. Gross to think about dead kids. But at the same time, the whole reason why they're talking about dead kids is so they can fundraise to replace the emergency services equipment necessary to help clean up the town. So I'm not going to keep reading all the summaries, but effectively, I really don't have a problem with it. I'm actually every creator, when their community is impacted by a natural disaster, this is what they should do. So yeah. Scrolling. Yeah, so there's nothing wrong here. In my opinion, there's actually nothing wrong here. Okay. Community coming together. So this is Steven, my friend, my social media collaborator. This is what he said. I heard God killed these kids because they were using NordVPN promo code Destiny to get around the Texas porn ban frowny face. What the fuck? like, what the fuck? Like, I know this is his humor. I know he's done fuck shit like this before. I know like it's actually a joke, all that kind of stuff. But the other day he was like, people call me a sociopath. I don't know why. Like, what have I ever done that's like sociopathic? Like there are no DMs of me being a sociopath. Steven, this is what they're talking about. There's like 70 people missing. There's 30 kids who definitely drowned / died by being hit with a wall of water that's 26 feet tall, and they inhaled mud until they died, and now their bodies are 30 feet under mud. And you said, God killed these kids because they were looking at porn using my discount code. Now, this is the fucked up part, okay? Not only is this tweet fucked up, obviously it's fucked up. And, Steven, I'll say this to his face, fuck you. But the NordVPN responded, which makes it funny and pisses me off. It pisses me off that it's funny. Hello, everyone. This tweet falsely suggests a sponsorship with us. No such relationship exists. We are reviewing this misuse of our trademark. That unironically is funny. So that pisses me off. It's annoying. Steven got a shitload of fucking attention for it. And the only thing that people can point to is the virtue signaling around the Palisades fires, which I guess we should go ahead and research a little bit now. Donut operator. He follows me, but he doesn't check his DMs, which is upsetting because I think I'm technically bigger in my 40K channel. I think I'm bigger than some of the people who went to the creator thing. But let's see if I search specifically on his donut operator Palisades. The only thing that people have been pointing out in chat is that donut operator was making fun of the fires in LA. And LAFD assistant chief says that she can't remove a grown man from a fire and it's his fault for being there. Let's actually.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Yeah, that's pretty cringe. I'm actually with donut operator on that one. Anyways, that's not related. That's not related. That's not related. So maybe somebody could do a better job. Oh, here we go. Here we go. The redneck rig delayed fire starter device in the last thread is what ultimately led to Orr being caught. In 1987, there was at a fire investigator convention in Fresno, California, and somehow, okay, so he's talking about the lack of investigation surrounding people actually being arsonists during the LA fires. He's talking about the history of LA fires, which you could say is callous. All right. Well, I think people could help me out here. People could help me out and find something better. I'm sure he basically capitalizes on watching people get smoked by law enforcement. And let's just say the last video I watched, he was very like, ha 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 ha. Look at the memes of this guy getting mag dumped by police. What a piece of shit. Lol. So yeah, he can be quite callous about people dying. So I'm okay with that. That saying that he's like a callous fucking piece of shit. But I have no idea. So if somebody wants to find me some Palisades tweets, we'll take it from there. I'm basically going to respond to chat, and then we're going to get into the next content. I haven't actually picked Destiny Decoding the Gurus because I'm a little bit pissed. But you know, let's go ahead and check in with chat. Well, that's a summary of the situation. Steven's a fucking asshole. It was funny, but also, you know, fuck him a little bit for that. Kay says, what was the tweet even? Is it still there? I just read you the tweet. Son Patty, I used to squat 490 for reps. That's what took out my knees. Based. Uncle Fatty says, don't forget the French stink. Well, if you don't shave your armpits as a girl and you don't use deodorant, then you could stink a little bit. Sorry, I don't speak baguette, says Artie's corporate fiction. Christian Blair says, they prepare the students for adulthood when they have to wave the white flag and get their butts stomped. That was in reference to the French, not in reference to the floods. Wowman 542 says, I think it's the monetization of outlandish, angry content that's the biggest obstacle in getting any side to return to normal after throwing rocks. Yep. You're rewarded algorithmically. Even if you have like thousands of people who are calling for your death in social media, what will happen is an extra few thousand pissed off people will check out your social media, and some of them will be like, oh, it was a joke. And I like dark humor, so I'm going to stick around. And then they stick around. So, you know, it's financially beneficial to be an asshole. John Kennedy says, I just asked Grok to find any tweets about Donut and Brandon directly making fun of the victims of the Cali wildfires rather than the politicians. Couldn't find any. I'll continue looking. Yeah, that's where I think that talking point might not really hit that hard. Christian Blair says Phil and co are posting news articles about they had adequate weather personnel and funding. That is actually more important to determine more so than Destiny shit stirring. I agree. But what I don't like Christian Blair, and, you know, God help me, I might be being a little bit of a pedantic douchebag. What I don't like, though, is the whataboutism thing. And I do it too. We're all guilty of it. You know, something bad happens, then you go, well, in the context of this broader scenario, is it really that big of a deal? We all do that shit. But I also want to hold feet to the fire here and say, like, okay, did somebody like Donut or Brandon do something equivalently repugnant to the point that Steven can say, well, actually, I'm just mirroring this bad behavior from conservatives? Puzzle Headed says, morning from the boardwalk in AC. Oh, cool. Cool. Sen Patty says, for my birthday, I demand one-to-one parity on likes and viewers. So chip, chop, chip, y'all. Yeah. So everybody like the stream. It's free. It helps out the stream, etc., etc. Funk Dark says, it's just horrible that in this day when everyone has a phone nearby while sleeping with our EAS system, that better warning couldn't have gone out. Yeah, I just don't know what the signal was like down by the river. I went camping recently and there was no signal where I was. LB says, because Connor, most don't give a S, nor are they trained to fundraise. Maybe if FEMA was on the ground, they could organize. Sure. Eric Dom says, yeah, I was surprised Destiny always rants about people not living their values in real life, but also make fun of it when they do. But then I remember they have history and like Trump. Yeah. They're beefing because of previous social media beef. Crayon says, read the underlying tweet. Were you talking about the NordVPN or something else? Sen Patty says, okay, that's kind of funny. He was mocking a woman who was spreading conspiracy theories about the weather MGT style. Oh, okay. Was that a quote tweet and I just didn't even notice? Let me check my bookmarks. Oh, okay. Let's add some context here. I'm so tired. I didn't even notice that it was a quote tweet. Let's read it. I've been trying to wrap my head around how the flooding in Texas became so devastating so quickly. Why not evacuate? Then I saw this. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said the Guadalupe River rose 26 feet in 45 minutes around 4 a.m. That doesn't seem natural. Okay. Again, I don't know what to do with that. What do I do with that? A Marjorie Taylor Greene simp was saying that she thinks it's like Jewish space lasers melting the polar ice caps in order to cause floods. What? I still don't think that justifies this response, guys. I'm gonna be real. I don't know if I liked that. Like, he was mocking a woman who was spreading conspiracy theories about the weather MGT style. Sure. Bro, I laughed so fucking hard when I read it. I hope the NordVPN thing is where you laughed, because the NordVPN thing was brutal. Uncle Fatty says, National Oceanic and Atmosphere Association. Yeah, that doesn't seem controversial. Neutral concern picks have different effects on different people. Whoa. Don't know how to translate that. John Kennedy says, another way to know that what Destiny is doing is farming outrage views is how little Donut is responding to Destiny about it. Donut's busy doing good work while Donut jerks it. Sure, but I don't want to give Donut a totally free pass either, where I'm not saying that he did say jacked up stuff about the Palisades, but if he was making fun of the Palisades, we're talking about how like it was actually firebugs who caused the Palisades, then I'd be like, okay, well, good for the goose, good for the gander. And then not just that, Donut, a lot of people, we are all selectively callous when it comes to loss of life. I think you should probably, if there's going to be life that you care about, it should probably be children under the age of 10 who have committed no crime, who died in a way that doesn't make sense and seems horrifying, right? Those are lives that you should probably empathize with and care about, right? Now, that being said, I think that Donut Operator has effectively made a living, and I'm not being overly critical, but I'm being mildly critical. He's made a living effectively laughing at people getting killed by police. That's the content that we watched together a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. And yeah. LB says, I don't think it's funny at all. I think the NordVPN thing is funny. I think the original tweet isn't funny. Like it's kind of fucked up. Fung Dark says, okay, that's not as bad as I was expecting. Good. AKA Batasui says, I used to live in Georgetown area in Texas. Last I heard, 3 people missing there too. Gotcha. Crayon says, he's responding to this seems unnatural R slur person. Got it. Sapien says, yeah, Destiny should have waited at least 3 more days to make this joke. No. I don't care about the timing. It's the content. Have I told that Steven that I think he's a sociopath? Probably. I think so. There might even be clips of it. We should check the I'm not going to, but we could check the original interview, or not the interview, but the debate about Men in Black. And we could check the gun thing. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. And also in my like essays about the drama, I've described how I think he's sociopathic. Eric Suman says Pisco versus Connor morning battle should become a thing now that you both stream most mornings during the week. Yeah. So if he's taking the morning slot too, maybe what I need to do is I just need to like once a week, Pisco and I need to do a collaborative stream where we just fight about something. DJ2606 says he was responding because donut operator talked shit on California wildfires and helped spread conspiracies. Right. But what we saw was Donut vaguely talking about firebugs and saying that like firebugs are a real problem and people dismissing it are incorrect. He didn't go, lol, I heard the Palisades fires were caused by sodomy and God punishing California. That didn't happen. So Steven's response is not equivalent to Mr. Donut Operator's statements. LB says this is just the beginning of natural disasters and lack of professional response from our government. It's tragic and there will be more to come. Sure. Son Patty says I like my morning coffee with Connor. Yeah, it's a great way to wake up. Eric says it'll be nice to hop between them both during work. Excellent. Brandon Zero says chat, that's Harold, the guy Connor and his homies stoned. World-renowned GeoHound says Destiny tweets were pretty freaking hilarious. I get the point he's making, and he's right. He's targeting the morons that use stuff like this to virtue signal. Meanwhile, they laugh at other tragedies. If you want to take it that way, you can. True says Pisco was streaming nights, now streaming days. Pretty sure he's not an actual practicing attorney if he can flip a schedule. Yeah. He's not targeting you unless you did what he's criticizing. I guess. So I guess the steel man of this argumentation is that there are conservative schizophrenics who either spread misinformation and or make fun of progressives when they are the victims of natural disasters and or violence. Actually, one of the things that I found most repulsive, and I was actually talking to my wife about it last night, was, have you guys seen there's a video. I could find it if I wanted to, but I don't want to watch it. There's a guy who, well, he's dead now. There was a guy who was really pro BLM and his girlfriend was pro BLM and they were like ACAB and they hated the police and wanted to defund the police and they lived in New York. And then a random homeless person starts accosting them in New York and stabs the boyfriend to death on CCTV camera. So you can just watch this guy in the initial shock of them being mugged. And then you can watch this guy get stabbed to death over the course of like 2 minutes. And the girlfriend basically sits there and watches it happen because she's so in shock. And so conservatives will post this video every 6 months and they'll basically be like, lol, isn't it funny that this pro BLM progressive was hoisted by his own petard by being murdered in front of his girlfriend by a random black homeless person when he hates police. And that to me is some of the most like cruel, inhuman shit I've ever seen in my life. That's routinely like every 6 months I see it on social media. And so, yeah, so if Steven is being as callous and freakish as those people to demonstrate how callous and freakish that behavior is, that could be the steel man of the situation. But I also think Steven just doesn't give a fuck. I think he just thinks it's funny. John Kennedy says, or was a serial arsonist in a previous video. Yeah, there you go. Eric Dom says, I think the fire person expressing themselves was wrong. I think they meant that most people die from the smoke, and if you are in the fire, it's usually way too late. For sure. It was a bad joke. I don't... Firemen, when I was working with FD would always respond to like house fires, but by the time FD is showing up, it's a kitchen fire. The ceiling just started getting burned. The cabinetry just started getting burned, and the family's already outside. That's like 90% of residential fires. When it comes to vehicle fires, it depends on whether or not the person is conscious. If they get into a wreck and then their car is on fire, but they're conscious, they will typically self-evacuate if they have the physical capacity to do so. The problem is if the wreck is bad enough that they either can't move or they're unconscious. Then they'll still be in the vehicle and you got to try to evacuate them while the vehicle is on fire. but you have to balance the safety of, is the vehicle imminently going to explode because the fire is spreading to the gas tanks, or is the engine on fire and therefore you have a minute or two to get the person out before the vehicle's engulfed. You have to do that. You have to do that calculus on evacuation. So I know what she's saying, but it's a nuance of the actual job that nobody outside of firefighting or first response is not going to understand. LB says it was an effing wildfire with 80 plus mile an hour winds. What the F? It wasn't started by homeless people. Well, LB, the contention, I'm not going to argue with you because I don't really care. The fire, the cause of the fire has nothing to do with the circumstances that cause it to be so intense. So even if it was like a firebug or a campfire that started it, if the situation on the ground causes it to spread that aggressively, doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Brandon Zero says, I think you can use Google to search for what you want, like put donut guy name and put whatever conflicts you want to see what he responded. Yeah, I'll try. Why are you mad at the gurus? I'm not. I'm not mad at the gurus. I'm a little mad at Steven, but to be honest, you know, I still think it's fucking stupid. I still think it's a fucking stupid tweet. The NordVPN thing is funny. It's just, if you don't find it funny, that's totally fine. I think the NordVPN part of it is like the fact that the company actually responded and they're like, we have no idea who this guy is. That's funny. Donut operator Palisades fire. So it's getting lost in the search results. If I go to the main search results, it's news stories, and if I go to images, it's actual news story related footage and photos. All right, I'm gonna read a few more, and then we're gonna pick the content. Chat's popping off. I appreciate you guys being here. Let me continue with chat for a bit, and then I promise we'll pick our content and get into it for the day. AKA Badasui says, you'd think if you were staying over the weekend in a floodplain, you'd have those avalanche locator beacons if they get submerged. Yeah, well, it's a little late now, right? There's 30 dead kids. So, I mean, if you want to time travel and give the camp counselors some advice on emergency preparedness, then feel free to use your time machine to go talk to the school and camp counselors and the vacationing families about emergency preparedness. But roughly 100 people were not aware of the necessary things to avoid being killed in a flash flood. So, you know, whoever suggested that, aka Badasui, if you want to use your time machine to go warn those people, go ahead. LB says, what's the point of looking up degenerate tweets? Let's talk about the cuts to NWS and NOAA. Well, LB, that topic is in contention. So I agree with you that in general, the cuts to the NOAA and the National Weather Service, baby, can I have a refill of hot water and whatever for the tea? Why are you smirking? What'd I do? Okay. 12:30. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. My parents are coming over for cousin camp. So they're taking the cousins on a series of adventures. And so I might have an early day today, but we still got a few hours, so I'm gonna stream. Uncle Fatty says, since when did the new normal become that True Social is the platform for official presidential announcements? Imagine Obama creating his own platform for announcements called Hussein Social. That'd actually be dope, man. If Trump runs for a third term, then Obama should run for a third term, because I will vote Obama. I'm just saying. You know, he can be a stinking Muslim communist traitor. Well, maybe don't take it too far, Obama. But if he's like a normie shitlib versus Trump, I'll vote for Obama for a third term versus a Trump third term. Eric Dom says, that's DGG. We come from Destiny's dark humor. We get him researching boring COVID streams that feel irrelevant at the time. The Falling for It Again award. All right, I'm gonna give it another minute in order to catch up with you guys, and then I'm gonna get cracking on new content. I understand that people came for Nebraska, Steve. In case there's like probably another 10 or 15 people who just joined in the past 5 or 10 minutes. We actually already covered what happened. I'll pull it up again just so I can read you the tweet. So you're not left in the dark and you're like, what What did Nebraska Steve do? What did he do? Donut operator and Brandon Herrera, who are some gun tubers who allegedly made fun of the Palisades fire, but we didn't find any of them. He was making fun of conservatives freaking out about the floods and implying that it was like Jewish lasers, Jewish space lasers. And Steven tweeted out, I heard God killed those kids because they were using NordVPN promo code Destiny to get around the Texas porn ban, frowny face, which is obviously fucked up when, like, I don't know, 30 kids drowned to death. But what is funny about this tweet, which I'll admit is funny, you don't have to find it funny, I think it's funny, is NordVPN responded and said, hello, everyone. This tweet falsely suggests a sponsorship with us. No such relationship exists. We are reviewing this misuse of our trademark. So, conservative, implying conspiracy theories about natural event that kills 100 people. Steven being an asshole. Company responding to Steven being an asshole in a funny way. That's it. Boom. There's the story. Now I'm just catching up with chat. So if you wanted the too long didn't read, there's a too long didn't read for you. AKA says, I'm pretty sure where I live and you're doing anything in an area you need to be rescued, then you'd have a way to be located. Sure, you're talking about emergency preparedness that most people are not ready for. I'm a Boy Scout. I'm actually an Eagle Scout. So I'm always prepared. And by always prepared, I mean that I just assume that I'm fucked and I have to self-evacuate. So I'm not always prepared. I'm mentally always prepared. Conservative liberalism says, giving Stephen a pass because you can forever what about someone else's behavior is kind of a limp behavior. Not everyone being an abrasive dickhead is giving meta commentary on the other side. True. True conservative liberalism. I actually agree with you. That's the steel man of the argument. Not the straw man or the normie take is that Stephen just woke up and chose violence and he just thought it would be funny to fuck with people. That's the normie take on what just happened. Marfins has just hopped on. I don't know what was said, but the NordVPN thing was hilarious. Yeah. There's some people in chat don't think it's funny. I thought it was funny. Wow, man says, join me in prayer chat. Hope we get Nebraska Steve onto the unsubscribe podcast so he and Donut Operator can properly butt heads. Yeah. They would view that as rewarding bad behavior, but it is fucked up and funny. And I'm sure they laugh about other people dying in fucked up ways all the time. I'm going to go ahead and open. You just reminded me that we should open and close our streams with the grill hottest prayer. May your grills stay hot, your beers stay cold, and may you keep all your fingers while blowing things up. Amen. Are the Jews at it again? Yep. They use space lasers in order to melt the polar ice caps so we would have more flash flooding. Fungark says, people totally ignorant of the geography here. Talking shit is so annoying. Yep. AKA Batasuis is 20 plus inches of rain, all in an area where two forks in the river meet. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar. Gen X says, Connor just given to the degeneracy. Never. I am Imperial. You are chaos. And I will never give in. We can both be liberal, libertarian, conservatarian, center left, center right, but I will never give in to the degeneracy. Christian Blair says, Donut operator Brandon Herrera and co. didn't really respond to Destiny when they were beefing. Lol, they called him a cuck, and that's it. Yeah. Razzle says, good morning, Connor in chat. I thought the joke was funny. It seems like most of the pearl clutching is coming from people who have tolerated way worse from their side, which I think was Dee's point. I think that's the steel man of the argument. I'm getting over it. I was annoyed and pissed last night. I think I saw the NordVPN thing either as I was going to bed or when I woke up this morning, and I thought that was funny. And then I still was pearl clutching, but, what the fuck? It's a joke on the internet. There's real shit to worry about. NordVPN got scared and responded. Yeah, that was the funny part. Ensword says, back in 2009, I'd have expected live streamers and guys who make videos about cop shootings to make cruel jokes about dead kids. Yeah, actually, here's another dynamic of it. Is that there was a party. I don't know if it was the phase party. I don't know any of the Twitch aristocracy memes. But apparently there was like a big party with all the streamers. And there was some guy, NMLK or something, some random black streamer. And he made a joke about about the dead kids. And everybody was like, ooh, like they were like pearl clutching at the party about it. And then Donut called him out. and effectively said like, oh, you can make fun of this shit, but you're not down here fucking sweating with the first response. Why don't you use your platform for good and blah 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 blah. And then that guy ended up apologizing. So he doubled down on it at first, and he was like, well, dark humor, blah blah blah. But yeah. AKA Badasoy says, people who bike around Texas know that if it starts raining, you go to a high point under some cover because it literally dumps rain real fast and it goes towards the drainage areas real fast. Well, I don't know that. I lived in Plano, though, so it didn't really happen that much. John Kennedy says, I've watched a bunch of Donuts videos, and the only time Donut laughs about people dying is when those same people are in the process of committing horrific crimes. Yeah. So, they're still people. Deserve some level of dignity. Louis Salazar says, lol, Pisco versus Connor every time is a good idea. Yeah, we should just wake up and choose violence with Pisco every day. Christian Blair says, Destiny has never watched Connor on stream, though, lol, so he wouldn't have seen Connor call him a sociopath. Well, I'll just say it to his face next time. Isn't taking the time to mock the lesbian firefighter video while people are dying just as crass? I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? There was kind of, so Donut Operator watched a lesbian firefighter who said that if your husband is in a house on fire, then it's already too late, lol. And he was like, oh my God, this fat, dumb B word. He didn't say B word, but this fat, dumb idiot is part of DEI and is going to get people killed. Is that as crass as saying that kids were looking at pornography through a VPN? I don't think so. Maybe you could say it's just as callous within the context of like an emergency event. Kingslayer says Donut also does apologia for cops who beat compliant people. Sometimes I do it because your definition of compliance is not the same as my definition of compliance. Compliance is listening to orders and then doing it. That's what compliance is. Compliance is put your hands on your head, okay? Turn around and walk backwards towards me, okay? Compliance is not, hey, I'm not doing anything. Hey, I'm not doing anything. What are you doing? What are you doing? Hey, I'm not doing anything. That's not compliance. LB says, I get the joke. In my opinion, it's disgusting. Yeah. Razzle says, Connor, did you see the most recent Dean Withers crash out? Because holy hell. No, I didn't. What was it? Well, we'll start content in another few minutes. I understand I'm probably going to lose some people who are just clinging on, hoping we'll get some more Nebraska Steve memes. But honestly, we got to work today. We got to make segments. Did I see the most recent Dean Withers crash out? No, wasn't it? He called. There was a dad who was arguing that his kid can't consent, and therefore it's the right of parents to consent or non-consent on different things. So, for instance, if his kid was going to model for like Gerber baby ads, then it was up to the parents to do it. And then Dean was making some argument about like whether if the kid doesn't consent, then you can't do whatever. And the dad was like, well, the kid can't consent, so shut the fuck up. You're not a parent. You don't know what you're talking about. And so Dean was like, chat, call CPS on this guy. Dox this guy. Which is just like progressive R slur. Kay says, Pisco announced he's backing away from active practice to go more into content like a week or two ago. Well, good for him, but stop stealing my time slot. AKA Batasui says, you can build your own standing desk for $60. Cool. Well, she's a woman, so what is she going to do? Slap him? Well, if it wakes him up and then he gets out of the fire, that's cool. From Bumley says, Destiny is an F slur. Don't know why everyone rides his gay, bi, STD-infested D. I would actually celebrate Destiny's deletion. I just wish Destiny was black so I could hate him more. Jesus Christ, From Bumbley. Take a lap. Go outside. That is some schizo level hatred. You can be pissed. You can hate Destiny. You can think that was a cringe joke / statement, but that is a banana series of words. Kingslayer says, John Kennedy, there was a man that shot at the cops and ran into a building. The cops chased him and the man put down his gun and started following commands. The officers said, get on the ground. Adrenaline's, so I'm just going to say this, Kingslayer Damocles, if they beat that guy who shot at the cops, then obviously that's not following procedure. Obviously that's not correct. There, you can morally object to it. I'm just going to say adrenaline's a hell of a drug. That's what I'm going to say. So, if somebody shoots at you, it's wildly unnatural. People expect, and cops try to be, they fail all the time. but they try to be like legal automata, where it's crime, response, detention, jail. And I think law enforcement, when it's at its best, is that neutral, where even if somebody has done something horrible, you still put them in handcuffs, you treat them like a human being, you take them to the jail cell, you get them charged, you build the case with the strongest evidence possible, and then you try to get them incarcerated based off of the facts. However, the truth is, at the end of the day, cops are human beings who see the worst parts of humanity day in and day out, and eventually they freak the fuck out. Gen X says, we need a wrench here. I'll promote you, Jen. Although I don't know if I have control over this chat, but I'll check and see if I do. John Kennedy says, Kingslayer, Damocles, and Connor would 100% have the same opinion. I'd have to see it. I'd have to see the specific one. Because if there's like a broad length of time between the shooting and the actual detention / arrest, and then also if it's within the context of like they get a couple of punches in and then they chill the fuck out versus they just beat the crap out of the guy for like, ooh, hot tea. They beat the crap out of the guy and they keep beating the crap out of the guy, then yeah, I think that's bad. Okay. But just as an example, Kingslayer, you don't have to agree with me on this. There was a guy in Orlando who murdered his pregnant girlfriend and then murdered a black female cop. And then in pursuit, another 2 cops died. I forget how. They might have, I think one of them just had a heart attack during normal patrol operations, and one of them got into a vehicle crash while they were pursuing the homicide suspect. And so as a result, all in all, this guy directly or indirectly caused the deaths of 4 human beings, and 2 of them in the worst way possible. His pregnant girlfriend, he just shot to death and killed the fetus, the baby as well. And then with the female cop, she confronted him outside of a Walmart and he mag dumped into her vest. And then while she was on the ground, he reloaded and put a couple of rounds into her head. So for me, the level of sympathy I have for that person plummets. And so while people were arresting him, they caught this on camera. And to my knowledge, the cops have not been charged. It was like Orange County Sheriff's Office, OPD. They actually kicked the dude's eye out of his socket. They walked up and they just started beating the fuck out of him while they were arresting and detaining him. And I do agree that that's illegal, unethical, and I still understand it. And the reason why I understand it is because this dude killed a pregnant lady and killed a cop, and 2 other cops died indirectly as a result of his actions. People are tribal and they are emotional. Randy Chang says 26 feet in 45 minutes is nuts. Yeah, at 4 a.m. too. So I hate to imagine it, but when I imagine it, I think people probably got the warnings on their cell phones, but they were so tired because it was 4 a.m. they just rolled over and went back to sleep, and they died as a result. Unork says, hey all, reminder to like the vid. If you like it, always forget on live streams. Yeah, I like it. Brandon says, before you go deep in the context of the day, please react to Dean Slither doxing a guest in his stream and getting his community to call CPS on the guy because he didn't like the answer. Sure. Jimmy Beam says, the local news station did a good timeline of alerts and warnings that were sent out. It was pretty good. There was warning. Yep. LB says, no, let's stop spitting on the Constitution. How about that? No third term basta. Yeah, I'm playing into memes. Relax, LB. Relax. Go drink your coffee. It's okay. Rude says, read somewhere they tried to put forward legislation that allowed Trump to run for a 3rd term, but not Obama, because the stipulation was they didn't serve 2 consecutive terms. Yeah, that's silly. And there's 2 constitutional amendments that effectively preclude it. They were talking about him running as the vice president, and there's a specific thing in the Constitution that says like you can only run 2 terms. And then there's another specific thing that says that nobody who is ineligible for the office of the president can run as vice president, which obviously precludes somebody who's already served 2 terms. Wowman says, have you looked into Louis Rossman's content? He covers right to repair and recently interviewed a Navy commander and why the military needs right to repair. Nope. And no offense, that sounds like a Midwestern rural thing to care about. And it's not that it's not important. It's massively important. But, you know, what am I going to do? I'm going to show a bunch of urbanites the fact that farmers need to be able to repair their equipment because otherwise they're at the whim of megacorps. I don't think people are really going to care too much about that. No offense. I care about it. I don't think chat's going to care about it. Christian Blair says, I like Destiny for his dark humor and intelligence, but I probably wouldn't vote for him if he ran for office. That is the difference between most of these posts and MAGA chud losers. That's an okay point. Jimmy Bean says, wouldn't those just be late-term natural abortions to Stephen? I hate that you said that. Uncle Fatty says, Destiny does not exist, man. There's no fate but what we make. On my honor and to help others at all times. Well, you're starting the day with a weed. All right. I'm not going to be able to catch up with you guys, so I'm going to read like 2 more, and then I'm going to get to the super chat. Then we're going to start some new content. I guess since we're on Destiny anyways, we might as well do Decoding the Gurus. Why not? You guys kind of... Destiny... Decoding the Gurus. I'm only going to have time for 1 segment today, so like I said, just sharing, because I parasocially love you guys. My mother, who is a saint in many ways, is running a cousin camp where she brought cousins from Texas and cousins from Florida together in one location so they can go to parks together and play together and go to theme parks and all that kind of stuff. And so they're going to have like a 4 or 5 day adventure, and it starts at 12:30 p.m. and I have to say goodbye. Grey Jedi says, what is your real opinion on Obama? While he did some things I didn't like, he seemed to push policy that helped most Americans, yet people even to this day act like he's bad. Yeah, I would say Bush was a disaster, but he's probably my favorite president of the past 20 or 30 years. I would say Obama on the whole was probably the best president we had. Obviously, gun stuff pisses me off. I think the ACA could be good policy, even though it was unconstitutional and totally fucked up the market for healthcare. I think that his war on terror prosecutions, by allowing ISIS to grow as a cancer and fester, he killed people through negligence. I also dislike the fact that he saw the Yazidis getting enslaved and attacked, and he didn't do anything about it. I think that's super cringe and fucked up, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I did that. However, on the whole, I think he actually struck a pretty strong centrist balance when it came to governance. Short Stack Goblin says the context of the firefighter was dragging a colleague, not a victim. That's why he shouldn't be in that situation. Interesting. Boondoxian says it's not as crass, but I feel as though it's definitely tone deaf. If a tragedy is happening, the first thing you're supposed to do is help and offer condolences. Politicizing just exacerbates things. Right. And by the way, I'm just going to say this. We're doing good as a channel and a chat. And what I mean by that is my Warhammer 40K channel is chugging right along, making some cash. And then in the past 3 months, we kind of buoyed up almost to the point that I'm replacing my salary with Valor Media Network through advertising revenue and chat donations. And so as a result, there's like an 80% chance that even in October, when this contract ends, I'll probably still be able to continue as a full-time streamer. There's actually a really strong chance. And then from my perspective, it's just a matter of time. If we're able to do this full-time for a prolonged period, it's just a matter of time until we're big. And then once we have a 6-figure income, I don't need 6 figures to live. I will carve out a healthy chunk of that revenue. So for instance, in this kind of situation, I want you to hold me accountable to this. I would carve out 10%, 20% of our annual earnings, depending on what's profit, what's excess. And I would do the way Steven did canvassing events. I would effectively want to do disaster relief. So I would want to already be in Texas buying supplies for locals who need help. And then also, if other people wanted to come out, helping with hotels and gas money and all that kind of stuff. So hold me account. If we're still full-time in a year and we're making good money, then I want to do it. Okay. All right. Let's get to the super chat. Then we'll watch Dean Withers just for the quick memes, and then we'll get into the Decoding the Gurus. Herkimer says, when are you and Tiny having a field trip to Alligator Alcatraz? Well, they blocked it off, so we're probably not going to Alligator Alcatraz, but our Bro Venture date is set for the 27th. Flooding in North Carolina was wild last night. Yep. All right. Jason says Connor being bullied relentlessly in grade school by a French kid perfectly explains why he became a cop. The joke wrote itself. Well, to be fair, along with the other 20 kids, I picked up rocks and dirt clods and beat the shit out of the kid with the other French kids. So, you know, you're right. My sense of justice was developed in the French school system. Lawson Harrison for $20. Thank you for the donation, King. Says Destiny is an F slur, but it's because he had a brand new alien pistol that he didn't shoot for months. Does he have a Lago alien? Does he have a Lago? Dude. Now I have to DM him and be like, hey, your joke pissed me off and I talked about it, but if you have a Lago alien, you need to bring it to the range. Oi. I'm chatting a bit of shit about your tweet as I talk about it. I'm getting less pearl clutchy. However, someone in chat mentioned that you have a Lago alien pistol? Question mark. If that's true, you need to bring it to the range. And if you need help cleaning the guns afterwards, I will help. That's the thing about the Lago alien. I'm going to show you guys real quick. We're going to get into other content. Chat's popping off, and I appreciate you. 120 people cross-platform. I parasocially love each and every one of you. Please like the stream. It's free. Watch the VODs. It's free. It gives me sweet, sweet ad revenue. Watch the VODs on the Counterpoints channel. That's where they're posted. Super chats if you got them. Memberships if you got them. They're appreciated, never required. And there's something else that I'm supposed to shill, but I forget what it is. So sorry. But thank you, Lawson Harrison, for the donation. Much appreciated. Let's go ahead and take a look at a Lago alien. Then let's look at the Dean Withers crash out. And then let's take a look at the Decoding the Guru segment. So I'm going to show you Menace official gameplay. Looks like a science fiction RTS. I think I'm going to need a look at that. Lago alien. So here's a Lago. Let me share my screen. Add to stage. So if I'm going to mute it. So this is a Lago alien, and it's a pistol where they put the barrel on the bottom, and then they made the reciprocating part on the top, and the slide doesn't move at all. And so it has very, very minimal recoil. It's like almost an over-engineered pistol. But the 1911s and the 2011s are considered like the premier, guns. And effectively, the Lago's design halves the recoil of elite firearms that are used in gun competitions. So it's supposed to be like a shooter's dream where it's way over engineered and it's way too expensive. But it's just a really cool design that rich people can afford. So then it looks like somebody made a new Command and Conquer RTS with near future sci-fi aesthetics. So if you guys are into Command and Conquer, then here's your new game, Menace. That actually looks pretty cool. Looks like they got mechs, they got active camouflage, they got snipers with railguns. Yeah, this actually looks dope. Turn-based though. Oh well. All right. Anyways, let me do an intro and actually do some content. I'll still be checking in with chat, all that kind of stuff. So let me do an intro. All right. Hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name. Well, actually, I don't even want to do that, right? Hi, guys. My name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and I'm a never Trump Republican, and I like breaking down the politics du jour. After a morning segment in which Stephen Bennell II, aka Destiny, made me mad because he made a spicy joke in reference to a natural disaster that actually killed people, we're going to go ahead and watch his breakdown with Decoding the Gurus. I think it's going to be an interview style thing that's going to poke into his politics and his psychology and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be chilling here probably for the next couple of hours and breaking it down every few minutes or so. Go ahead and like the stream and watch the VODs and comment down below for the comment gods and all that kind of stuff. And without further ado, let's go.
Hello and welcome to Decoding the Gurus, the podcast where a psychologist and an anthropologist listen to the greatest minds the world has to offer, and we try to understand what they're
By implication, is Stephen one of the greatest minds of the world?
talking about. I'm Matt Brown, the co-host is Chris Kavanagh, and this is a special Right to Reply episode, isn't it, Chris? Who have we got with us today?
We have with us one Stephen Bonnell, also known as Destiny, who we recently covered and invoked the secret right to reply rights. So thank you for coming on, Stephen, and staying up late, which was appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Am I on? Am I in?
You're on and you're in.
Okay.
So typically the way this works, though, to be fair, it's only been invoked about 3 or 4 times, because every time we cover people, they're not usually the type of people that respond well to being covered. So, but there technically is a format where we allow people to raise any points of dispute or issues, or anything we got wrong, or just questions or that kind of thing. And then afterwards move on to more discussion and questions that came up from the stuff that we covered or elsewhere. And in your case, we did get a lot of feedback. You may not know it, but you're quite a controversial figure on people have opinions.
Great.
Yeah, they definitely do.
Yeah, I've heard this recently. I'm curious, for the people that refuse to exercise their right of reply, and I imagine there's people that obviously take issue with a lot of the coverage you give them. What's their number one reason, or what are the most common reasons you hear them say for why they don't want to come on and chat about it?
Well, the biggest reason they don't come on is frankly because we're not important enough. That would be the biggest reason.
That's the most important factor. The second one is that a lot of the people we cover identify anybody that is given even mild critical pushback as bad faith actors, right? Mm-hmm. So in that case, if they do acknowledge it, it is usually just to say that we are not worth their time, or an example of the kind of people that people shouldn't listen to. So that tends to be the reality.
We're still warming up, so I'm just going to address a couple of chats. PS Work says, I heard 40K where? Type in Counterpoints 40K into your search bar. You'll find my breakdown content. Effectively, I take all of the animations and cinematics that are currently available in the Warhammer universe. I watch 5 minutes. I cut out 30 to 40% of the original product. I stop every 5 minutes, and I explain everything that's going on. Especially new people and some veterans who don't really care that much about the lore have found my content quite helpful. So, type in Counterpoints 40K and check it out.
Action, but there has been exceptions. Sam Harris has taken up his right to reply twice with varying degrees of success. And we had Chris Williamson, who you chatted with back in the day. Yeah, gotcha. That was more successful.
Sam Harris is my final boss guy that I really want to chat with. I would be more excited to chat with him than Joe Rogan. I really want to. Hopefully someday it'll happen, but yeah.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. I heard you on the stream talking about this issue when you're debating people about that you raise a question or ask people something and they monologue or they waffle on and on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just saying that might be something to think about if you do end up talking to Sam. So
sure.
Okay. But how about you, Stephen? We got the feedback from your feedback that the reception was generally positive, but maybe you got a few bones to pick or a few points of explanation to make, or...
I'm going to be honest, having somebody cover me and not call me a pedophile Nazi for 2 hours is actually, the bar is in hell. So if the coverage isn't that, I'm actually incredibly grateful. So...
All right. That's funny. That's funny. Pausing just to break up the content and also because I parasocially love you and want to read your chats. Crayon says, Valor Media Network, will you cover the Epstein no list memes? Yeah, let me cover it real quick. Jeffrey Epstein, very likely, in my opinion, bear in mind this is just my opinion, and opinions are like butts. Everybody has them and they oftentimes stink. Is that Jeffrey Epstein learned from Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell, who worked for the United Kingdom, Israel, and Russia, doing intel operations for all three countries. He was basically a double or triple agent. Learned how to do honeypot schemes. And so Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein trolled through South Florida, recruiting teenage girls to be masseurs for exorbitant rates, and then recruited them as underage prostitutes, some of them allegedly being as young as 13. Then he would party with incredibly rich and influential people in the country, like Alan Dershowitz, Donald Trump. There's pictures of him with Elon Musk, but I don't know if Elon Musk partied with him. Bill Clinton for sure has been to Lolita Island and probably had sex with underage prostitutes. And so as a result, vast amounts of our government was compromised, and our secrets were likely sold to the CIA for leverage and also sold to the Israeli Mossad for leverage. And the reason why it's not coming out is because not only would this hurt people that you want to hurt, like Donald Trump, it would also hurt people that Democrats don't want to hurt, like the Clintons. Because imagine that Bill Clinton, one of the most popular Democratic presidents of the past 50 years, loved on a level similar to Obama, was accused of participating in a child sex trafficking ring that then involved like murder and cover-ups, right? Now, I do think Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, but who cares what I think? Point being that the Trump admin promised that they were going to offer transparency, and they're not. And so my inference from this, call me conspiratorial if you want, is that everything that I suspect about the Jeffrey Epstein files is probably true. It was probably psychological operations. It was probably related to gathering intel and honeypots in order to give Mossad and CIA leverage over current American politicians. And the reason, and Bill Gates, by the way. And the reason why it's not coming out is because it would be too damaging to the public consciousness. There will be people like me and people involved in politics who will constantly crow about it. I guarantee you that 60% of normies, 70% of normies in the American public, they barely know who Jeffrey Epstein is. That's my take.
I feel like when and I say all of this cautiously because for all I know, if I dig deeper into your guys' stuff, you're just as problematic as everybody else, which maybe you get the impression when you dig into other people. It's hard to get people to make serious considerations, I feel, of other people's ideas. So for instance, if somebody says like, oh my God, we need to kill these fucking people, blah, blah, blah. Somebody will say that and somebody will come away with that and be like, oh, he just wants to murder all people. Instead of like looking at, okay, well, when he says kill all landlords, like what's actually going on here? You know, like the statement itself can be problematic, but there might be something underneath that we need to consider as well. And yeah, I just find when most people are considering stuff of mine, I've probably done, I don't know if it'd be an exaggeration to say I've probably done more broadcasted content than almost anybody in existence, just by virtue of like how unique streaming is and the fact that I've been doing it for about as long as anybody has been. It's easy to like clip 20-second statements and then have this insane caricature of me that you attack, even if there might be stuff that is worthy to criticize, like the actual criticism just ends up being insane, I think. Yeah.
I guess part of that too is that you come from that gamer type background and this internet subcultures and so on. And, you know, the way you choose to express yourself is pretty colorful, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like that's definitely a thing. One of the challenges of being a popular person on the internet is extracting valid criticism from demented online talk. So if a bunch of people are saying like an insanely mean, hurtful, not true thing about you, even if that criticism seems like bullshit, it's coming from somewhere, and it behooves you, if you want to survive in this arena, or at least adapt so that people can understand you better, to figure out like where it comes from. I think that when people criticize me for, obviously I use colorful language, or I can get unhinged at times. I definitely...
Yep.
admit that. However, like the same types of strategies I believe are used to character assassinate basically anybody, right? So like on the other spectrum from me, you could compare me to say Biden. Biden doesn't generally make unhinged, crazy statements, but my God, every single time I talk to a conservative about Biden, they're telling me about like, remember the speech that he gave in front of the all red background when he said that half of Americans were racist and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, if I look at the speech, he's like, he tries to qualify so much where he's like, not all Republicans are MAGA people. Not all Republicans deny the election, but that doesn't matter. They still like assassinate on like the one or two lines. So yeah, I definitely don't do myself any favors, but I don't know substantively or significantly if the criticism against me would change if I hadn't made certain statements. That's just my feeling, but yeah, I could be wrong.
Like you say, you've been doing this a long time, right? So you know the kind of statements I imagine that are like going to be clipped. I mean, like recently you intentionally said things, right? So that they would like about the Jewish shekels being paid to you, right? For your commentary. So like,
yeah, if you think that's a spicy Steven take, then you haven't been paying attention. Although that is funny. So he was saying on his trip to Israel when he went to do interviews and hang out and check out the West Bank and all that kind of stuff. He was saying that he said it very deadpan that he was getting paid by the Israeli state in order to do so. The fact that these guys think that's spicy is borderline cute in this part of the internet. Matt says, how many hours a week are you working between both channels? I spend about 5 hours a week on the Warhammer channel. I basically research, script, and shoot. And then I spend 25 hours a week on this one live, and I probably spend another 5 to 10 hours doing back-end stuff for the Valor Media Network. And then I would say that I'm about to increase my workload by another 10 hours per week. I've already dedicated my Sundays to doing that. And the reason why is because I'm taking the Counterpoints 40K formula and I'm expanding it to Counterpoint Sci-Fi and Counterpoint Star Wars. They're effectively clones of my 40K channel. But Sci-Fi is obviously going to cover all sci-fi movies, and then Star Wars is going to cover Star Wars. Fashion 40 says, by the way, I feel the vengeance I desire is at another level. Fashion 40 was saying that his lib sensibilities were punched out of him by 3 20-year-olds who jumped him, and he actually feels like law enforcement is a justified thing, because when you get jumped by 3 20-year-olds, ideally there would be a man with a gun, taser, and pepper spray less than 2 minutes away, so we can make sure that those 3 20-year-olds don't actually kill you. Now, the practice of that idea is far from ideal, but it should still exist. Eric Dom says, do you have a subreddit? Asking because I think the community building would help get that 80 to 100%. I know that yourself. Eric Dom, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, DM me on Twitter. Right now, most of our community engagement is in Discord, but I feel like Discord is a closed community. And so as a result, it doesn't grow as quickly and it doesn't have a lot of cross-pollination. It feels like Discord bros hang out with Discord bros. Whereas I think what happens with subreddits is when you're talking about a topic, not only can people from the community kind of engage with whatever's going on, they can also have people who come in and cross-pollinate into other communities. So I do want to get a Reddit going. I don't know my butt from my elbow in reference to a Reddit. Sean Kaplan says, gotcha. Feels like likelihood a father or mother of a dead child saw this is relatively high, which pisses me off. Yeah, sure. Steven's a total fucking asshole in reference to his tweet. And if people are going to call him an asshole, I hope he expects that. PS Work says, I'm pretty sad at what happened to the Young Turks. Yeah, they kind of lost their minds. Sorry if you're progressive. That probably is a big hit. Sacred Snow says, good morning all. Had a big meeting today, so I'm a little late. Hope everyone had a good weekend. We did. So Gen X says, I never heard of Decoding the Gurus. Should I have? No. This is probably my last chat before we get back into it. Decoding the Gurus is an anthropologist and a psychologist who are breaking down the great brains of the day, but they only have 21K subscribers. So I think they just started. I think the idea and the quality of their commentary is why they're able to get big names.
Yes, I get it, because you're basically trolling for the lowest common denominator response to show that they're not even trying to do things in good faith, right? Because you then immediately after will say it's a joke. But in the case where, like, the clip that we played, and we played the longer context of it, where you were talking about the situation in Palestine and Israel before the conflict, and you made the throwaway line about, at this stage, I think we should just genocide the Palestinians, or not we, but like they should, and then you went on to talk about the actual situation and say, well, honestly, there's no solution, right? And I get your point that the fact that it's obvious if you listen to the rest of it, that you're not calling for a genocide, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you saying that, or in general, kind of layering in those hyperbolic or extreme statements, doesn't that make it like easy for people to do? And like,
people are saying that there's a more recent episode. This is from a year ago. So I think I screwed up because somebody suggested the most recent episode. So where is it? Where is it? Sam Harris, A Field Spotter's Guide. Oh, is this it? Guys, this is terrible marketing. That's why you only got 21K views. You don't even have Steven in the thumbnail. All right, they were just doing the intro anyway, so I'm going to click on the most recent one. That's, guys, Decoding the Guru, please DM me. This thumbnail is crazy. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward 5 minutes, just so we can skip the intro. So my bad. I didn't realize there was a more recent episode. That thumbnail is terrible.
Technicalities of whatever it is they're discussing, they all of a sudden like have nothing to back them up. This usually happens when you ask for an example or an explanation of an underlying thing. So we call this the lazy gardener, and I hate this. I hate it.
Why is it called the lazy gardener? Just out of curiosity.
Well, what good is a gardener if they're not willing to get into the weeds? Wouldn't that be a reason to hire a gardener? Yeah.
So just a point of order, we're going to see probably lots of connections and doubling up between the things that we're mentioning. So I'm just going to mention that my number 5 on my list is, there's some connections with the thing you're describing. I called it decorative scholarship. And, this is something we see, which is kind of.
Possum Nation says, Connor, 120 viewers. How is Valor Media Network still demonetized? It's not. Go ahead and do the super chats or become a YouTube member now.
Heavy name, citation, technical term dropping, mentioning, alluding to a bunch of things and hinting that there's a great deal of depth there. But, they don't go into it, right? Because it's purely there. It's being mentioned purely for decorative purposes. It does the things that you're describing there, Destiny. But I think what it also does is it suggests this sort of deep learning, this deep scholarship, this deep awareness of all of this information that simply isn't there. They've usually got a pretty superficial understanding of it, and it's really just serving those decorative purposes.
I want to hear who he's referring to for decorative purposes. So this title is A Field Spotter's Guide to Guru Rhetoric, and this is being descriptive about certain characters. In the thumbnail, don't worry, we're at 7 minutes. There's Konstantin Kisin, Brett and Eric Weinstein, and Jordan Peterson on this thing. And so I want to see who they're talking about specifically. Now, for Brett Weinstein, I'll admit, over the past 5 years, he has been one of the most disappointing anti-SJW pundits out there, because effectively he started as this like progressive contrarian who was breaking with the heterodoxy of whatever was going on. But once you get past there, it doesn't seem like there's much substance besides contrarianism. Konstantin Kisin, I also don't view as like a particularly deep person. Jordan Peterson and Eric Weinstein, though, I can steel man them all day. So I'm actually very curious about who they're going to name.
Decorative purposes. It does the things that you're describing there, Destiny, but I think what it's really just serving those decorative purposes. My example here, currently researching Peter Thiel, because we're going to cover him next.
Ooh, I agree with that. Peter Thiel is an interesting character, but he doesn't have a lot of stuff, at least in the interview that I watched with Ross Douthat, he didn't have a lot. Once you got past to let's disrupt the current, government and thought processes and orthodox ways of thinking, it didn't seem like he had a lot to offer under that. I need to research Peter Thiel more, but yeah, I agree that that's the way that he was speaking for sure.
And he frequently references a philosopher, Stanford philosopher called René Girard. And he's a Foucault-style Jungian philosopher who I think is pretty useless and obscure in any case. But, Peter can use that to leverage the kind of credibility that's there. But in truth, it's a bit like Jung. It's kind of bullshit, but it's deep. But
oh, fuck yourself. All right. I'm not going to like this guy, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll fight in a minute. I'm going to let him give us some information before I got pissed.
But he just zeroes in on the dumbest and most superficial idea that this philosopher's got, which is that apocalyptic predictions in the Old Testament are going to be predictive of some present day apocalyptic risks and are somehow useful for understanding AI and nuclear war and so on. So he's basically saying Old Testament prophecies are real.
All right. I'm gonna try to steelman this, which is actually really frustrating that somebody this intelligent doesn't understand what's going there. And now, bear in mind, there could be literalist cringe mixed in, but since Peter Thiel is an atheist, I don't think that that's what is going to happen. So, if you study the Bible, which I understand half of you are heathen pagan freaks, so you're already switching your brains off. If you study the Bible, there are predictors for when a civilization is going to go through turmoil. And those predictors oftentimes have to do with corruption, unresponsiveness of the government, social and cultural and technological stagnation, like an amassing of enemies. There's all these like biblical sociological things that happen to the state of Israel and to Rome before they fall. And so as a result, studying those predictive things that happen before a society collapses is actually probably pretty good. Now, believing that they're one-to-one predictive is obviously cringe, but saying that there's nothing worth studying there, I find dismissive and stupid. Melody says, Connor, what are your thoughts on Econoboy coming out as socialist? I feel like all my issues with him have now been made more clear. No, I agree with you completely. One of my frustrations with Econoboy in our conversation on Live and Learn, and also with on Live and Learn, and also on Tim Pool, was that he was like, here's all these descriptive things. And I was like, yeah, I agree with 70% of your descriptive things. And then he was like, therefore socialism. And I was like, we're missing a few variables here. Fucking Econoboy.
Totally superficial and stupid idea, but by doing that kind of name dropping and superficial engagement with this sort of hinting at this background literature, it comes off as profound.
There's a double standard in play whenever people are doing the kind of Lizzie Gardner approach, where often people want to cite specific examples, but in the way that Matt's talking about, like a performative, decorative thing. So like you recently, Stephen, were talking to a MAGA guy, and he wanted to reference that there were like FBI or CIA informants in the crowd, right? And because of a report that made, he wanted to say agents in the crowd, but you pointed out, no, it's the report was talking about informants, which is a very different thing. And then that was presented as, oh, this is a, wordplay technicality. So it's like using like citing things so it gives the impression that you have like this knowledge, you've read the reports, you've got into the weeds. But if you're pushed on it, you then present it as like, well, this is just you're focusing on like a semantic issue that doesn't really matter to the bigger point. So you kind of get to do it both ways. You can either present your opponent as like an unrelenting pedant, but you, on the other hand, are able to just like constantly make reference to things that give the impression of depth. So there's a concept in psychology called pseudo-profound bullshit. And it's
number one, fuck you guys for calling me out like this. Number two, this is 80% of alternative media, guys. I'm not going to lie. Most of the most popular alt media pundits are not reading books. They're not reading studies. They're reading half a dozen to a dozen news articles, and they're giving their hip shot takes on it. So Candace Owens, 100% hip shots all day. Tucker Carlson, hip shots all day. Lex Friedman, hip shots all day. He says he reads like 6 books a week or whatever. I'm calling bullshit on that. And And yeah, so I would say a substantive amount of people, Tim Pool, I would say is probably another person where they have an ideology, they have a base, they have an approximation of where they want to be politically or socially or culturally, and then they just analyze current events or other alt media personalities through that lens, and then they repeat that ad nauseum. I try to be a thoughtful person. And when my surface level analysis is challenged, I try to admit where I don't know enough, and then I try to shore that up with research. I'm not good. I'm similar to all these other assholes, but at least I admit it.
It's normally referring to like stuff like Deepak Chopra, saying things that actually don't really mean anything, but sound mystical and kind of.
I don't like that either. Deepak Chopra does do pseudoscientific, mystical bullshit, but if you actually read religious texts, there's things that he references that are actually interesting.
Like they're philosophically deep. And this just seems to work really well in the podcast space as well. Like if you're good with words, if you're good at speaking and referencing research and whatnot, then you just sound like convincing. And like Matt said, the decorative scholarship thing is if you're an academic, and like there's bad academics as well, there's blowhard academics and all sorts of types in academia, but you can usually tell the difference between someone name dropping to look like very smart versus when this is actually a relevant, like source to provide to illustrate like a point more clearly. So yeah, those two things to me seem like overlapping.
I have one, I guess I can't use this now. It's called show, don't tell. If you've truly read some material.
Interesting that they're making it into chapters. That's cool.
And you've understood the material, you shouldn't have to rely on the other person having read the material for them to understand what you're saying. Anytime you are having a conversation with somebody and you're like, oh, you need to read this to understand, and that's it, and you can't explain it, then there's literally no point in you ever bringing it up because you did not read the material. I never believe so.
True. Jazz hands in chat. If you can't explain an idea simplistically, then fuck you, is what I say. So sorry for the profanity. But one of the things that pisses me off, I actually don't think about this guy a lot, but you can blame Jebtan, who is a creator in the Twitch and YouTube political space, for why I'm bringing this up. There's this guy named Admiral Gibbs, and I used to bump into him on Prime Kai panels, and I used to bump into him with Rob Knorr, and I used to bump into him on Wick and all that kind of stuff. And this dude is a fucking idiot. I can't phrase it any other way. And he's got a hate boner for me. And to be honest, since I kind of stopped participating with him and I blocked him on Twitter, I really don't think about him that much. But he'll say a sentence, and the sentence will be, all the Democrats are leftist Marxists who are destroying America through mass immigration. And then you're like, okay, what does Marxism, because Marxism in my idea is it's a economic and material analysis of the world, and it often states that like communism is the ideal endpoint for material humanity, so a moneyless, stateless, classless society. And then when it comes to communism, that's the same definition, right? Moneyless, stateless, classless society. And then socialism is the precursor to it. So I say, what do you mean by Marxism? Well, like what about mass immigration in the 21st century and 20th century Americas is Marxist? And you could do an explanation there. You could say that it's actually a plan in order to get the working classes of the world, the materially deprived, into America, so their grievances can be used as political leverage against the American imperial capitalist machine. And so as a result, not only will you accelerate statelessness, but you will accelerate the class struggle between the global South and the American empire, and therefore communism will be ushered in faster. If you understood Marxism, or if you understood the definition of communism, then you could make that argument. And I ask him to make that argument, or any argument whatsoever. But instead he says, fuck you, I'm not playing your definition game. And it's like, you're nowhere in debate should it be viewed as a debate tactic to define what you mean by words. That's just how conversation works. And so if somebody is not able to summarize their ideas at all, they should be viewed as an idiot. And if they're not able to summarize their ideas quickly, they're probably less of an idiot, but still an idiot.
Somebody when they say they've read multiple books on a topic and they throw out a couple authors or a couple book titles, but
they don't know shit.
Can't elaborate on any of the material beyond a quote that they've memorized. That is a
true. Like I quote Clausewitz all the time. I haven't read Clausewitz.
Huge red flag. And anybody that is like an example of somebody saying like, oh, well, this is why Descartes said that. Okay. But like, that doesn't mean anything. But if you're able to say like, oh,
no. I disagree with this part. The Clausewitz quote I do use is war is diplomacy by other means. If you actually understand that concept, then it makes all of geopolitics infinitely more understandable. So I don't agree with that part of it.
Oh, this is why some philosopher or some study said this, and it was interesting because in this, they talked about this particular phenomenon that's well understood here, and they were able to demonstrate that in this study, and that's why this is so interesting. It shows that you've read some important piece of material, that you can reference it appropriately, that you've like assimilated it into your thoughts and into the body of knowledge you have that has allowed you to arrive at some conclusion, and then you're using it to kind of like demonstrate that. It should be furthering an argument. Yeah, I call this show don't tell. Anytime somebody immediately says like, oh, well, I'm educated in this realm, that should be like a precursor to demonstrating your level of knowledge. If you have to tell me that you're educated in some particular field, it sounds like you're doing a really bad job at communicating your education because you have to bring that up as like a source of authority. I could never imagine having an argument in like music where I have to like appeal to like, well, I would just go over this, blah, blah, blah. Like I would just explain the thing because I learned the thing,
Yeah, there's two examples that come to mind of that recently. It's like there was Lex in the interview with Zelensky at the, the framing at the end, referencing he'd read 30 books. He's consumed all these and talking about how he's critical.
Yeah, but you don't understand shit about it. Yeah, that's where I would challenge, who is it? My dad likes him. Lex Friedman. I would challenge Lex Friedman because with Lex Friedman, he's like, I've read 30 books. And you're like, okay, can you explain them? And he's like, no.
Appraise them and whatnot.
I've read countless books about this war.
Oh my God, I didn't know we were going to get an edit.
And the long arc of history that led up to it. I've read Kindle or audiobook about 10 books fully. And then I skimmed about 20 more. And I don't mean books about Zelensky, although he does appear in some of them. I mean books where this conversation was fully in the back of my mind as I'm reading the book.
But in the interview.
I didn't know they were going to clip it in. That's awesome.
Showing extreme naivety about like the historical and current situation in Ukraine, right? Like, bringing up elections and like kind of repeating fairly bog standard talking.
He sounded like a guy from Twitter. I didn't hear a single question or thought that goes like my knowledge is extensively greater in everything having to do with Russia and Ukraine. And I've read exactly 0 books on Russia and Ukraine. So there's no way that he's read a
That's awesome.
Single one. I don't believe he's read a single one or 10 or 30. There's just no way that he couldn't have asked about any other agreements besides what Zelensky brought up, allude to any facts of the history. Like, yeah, I don't understand what was the necessary education for a single question that was asked here. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. People do this all the time. It's actually crazy.
Yeah. You're talking about dropping citations for purely performative reasons and not substantive ones. Jordan Peterson is another example.
Hey, fuck you. Don't talk shit about my dad.
He likes to mention that he's read, was it hundreds, Chris?
200 books on climate change.
200 books on climate change. Why not?
Okay. He has a reading list. And by the way, this is actually what's going to piss me off a little bit. Jordan Peterson reading list. And he also talks about the books extensively. Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, 1984, George Orwell, Road to Wigan Pier, George Orwell, Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky, Demons, Dostoevsky, Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche, Ordinary Men, Browning, The Painted Bird, The Rape of Nanking, Gulag Archipelago, Man's Search for Meaning, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Maps of Meaning, History of Religious Ideas, Affectionate Neuroscience. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that these are just like, I've heard him reference the fact that he has like 100 book reading list or a 200 book reading list. But already I can tell you that not only can he reference 1984 and Brave New World, he can articulate the themes behind the books. I know that he actually has a passionate analysis about Crime and Punishment. I know that Ordinary Men, I learned of Ordinary Men through either Jordan Peterson or Jordan Peterson or his Orbit. I know Beyond Good and Evil, he says, is necessary pre-reading before you read anything by Jung, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, or Hero of a Thousand Faces. So no, this isn't decorative. In my opinion, they're misusing this concept. They can dislike Jordan Peterson, but disagreement is not the same as incorrectness. So for instance, like Stephen and I disagree about Men in Black. Okay. I have a media analysis that is reinforced by evidence that I think is explicitly or implicitly made by the artwork itself and is also reinforced by the director. However, Stephen has a line of argumentation where he's using psychology and subtext and plot devices and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to say, based off of the evidence, that I am more likely to be correct. But that does not mean that Stephen doesn't have an articulable line of argumentation that is capable of being, I think they call it like valid and sound. Valid is where the logic is good, and sound, I think, is where the logic is good and it's true. Stephen could still have a valid line of argumentation. So just dismissing somebody because you disagree with them because they have a valid line of argumentation, but you don't believe it's sound, is an incredible way to miss important information. I actually think they're being fairly dismissive, but that's okay. That's okay. Let's see if they have anything more substantive.
I spent quite a bit of time going through the relevant literature. I read about 200 books on ecological, what would you call it?
I read maybe 200 books on ecological development and economic development, the relationship between the two. And
200 books.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Lex needs to think bigger. He's a.
Okay. Problem? Question mark?
He said he read 30.
Oh,
Now, ecological, I think the problem here, I will articulate the problem, is that he's saying that it's specifically ecological development. The way organisms modify their environment and the reciprocal influence of the environment on an organism's development. I would be surprised if he actually read 200 books on this topic specifically. He could have taken other books and then just kind of like rolled them in and been like, oh yeah, Dostoevsky. If you think about it, it's actually an ecological analysis of how human beings shape society and how society shapes human beings. So he could be using ecologically overly broad. And I would actually view that as like decent criticism. But if you look at this, like, look at this. This is an ecological framework. Individual, work, school, friends, family, neighbors, mesosystem, extended family, culture, political systems, social norms, macro system, economic system, and then chronosystem being time. This is like how individuals relate to society. So I think saying that sociological books that talk about like mythology are actually technically ecological analyses, I'm okay with that. You can say that's cringe. I think it's true. But that's okay.
maybe he should have read it more than just the Communist Manifesto for his debate against.
All right. Owned. Okay. I agree.
Zizek, remember that? He only read the fucking what an unbelievable fool. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I accept that. Now, technically, he didn't just read the Communist Manifesto. He also read Soviet propagandistic literature. He also read, Solzhenitsyn and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. Maybe he should have read more Marx and Engels and Mao. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, but
you guys are dicks.
You're right. I mean, sometimes there's a time and a place, and if you're going to bring something up, then you do it in order to use it in a substantive way to illustrate what you're talking about. I mean, I was just trying to think of an example, and I thought of one of my own, because there was this guy, what's his name? I forget his name, but he came up with this idea of luxury beliefs.
Oh, Rob Henderson.
Rob Henderson, right? It's kind of politically balanced. It's like an anti-woke thing, right? But there is a core to it which is pretty good. But the thing is, he basically has recycled it, taken it, consciously or not, from quite an old psychology paper from the 1980s called Beliefs Are Like Possessions. And I won't reprise it now, but when I bring that up, you can. It takes about 20 or 30 seconds. You can explain the fundamental idea in rough sketch of that idea in that paper, and show how this luxury beliefs thing is just a variant and a more specific type of that. So it can be done. So that's a substantive citing versus performative citing. Okay, good one. I think we've doubled up a little bit, but great minds think alike. Chris, it's your turn.
One of the things that we see a lot in the gurus that we cover is this use of strategic disclaimers. And this often happens whenever they're presenting themselves, like you were just talking about, that they have this expertise and scientific knowledge. So they'll slip in terms, or they'll add like caveats. And it's like Jordan Peterson or Brett Weinstein discussing, the possibility that hospitals might have harmed more people than they've helped now. They're not saying that's true, but the fact that there's, statistics that point to that.
I suspect if you did these statistics properly, I suspect that medicine, independent of public health, kills more people than it saves.
Yeah, that's kind of dumb.
I suspect if you factor in phenomena like the development of superbugs in hospitals, for example, that overall the net consequence of hospitals is negative. Now that's just a guess, but it could easily be wrong, but it also could not be wrong, and that is a good example, that's where my thinking about what we don't know has taken me with regards to the critique of what we do.
Yes, I think this is probably stupid. The reason why it's stupid is because you would have to have a 3000 IQ gigabrain in order to try to wrap your head around it. And so, as an example, let's talk about like viral epidemiological research. So the Wuhan lab, and a lot of people use this term, I forget what it is, but they talk about how the Wuhan lab and labs in Ukraine and labs all over the world or whatever are effectively studying virality. They study how diseases infect humans and other creatures and how they spread. And the hope is that not only can we see disease trends by studying these diseases, but also we can make like predictive public health choices that save lives. And overall, that's probably like noble work. I think torturing beagle dogs is particularly repulsive and should be a practice that's stopped. But overall, like epidemiological research is probably something necessary. However, let's say that instead of releasing coronavirus, they had released something that had the virality of coronavirus, but had the physical effects of Ebola. Because Ebola is actually quite deadly. I think even with supportive care, it'll still kill like a third of the people it infects. And the numbers get worse if you don't have supportive care. I think if you don't have supportive care, the death toll or the death rate can be around like 80% or 90%. So could it be that through the mass use of antibiotics, this is something that scientists actually talk about credibly, is that through the mass use of antibiotics, we might be creating antibiotic resistant diseases that will ultimately infect the population and kill vast swaths of the human race. And so at that point, you're going to have to take the math of the people who are killed by the antibiotic resistant disease versus all of the disease prevented and the deaths prevented by antibiotic treatment. And the truth is, the numbers might be closer than what is comfortable. So that's what he's pointing to. I think it's kind of dumb to assume that that is the case, considering how often hospitals are in operation. So I think it's kind of like a dumb analysis, but it points to something serious.
The fact that it's even plausible is a stunning.
I wouldn't say plausible. I would say possible and worth analyzing.
Well, medical error is the third leading cause of death.
Then, Brett will respond saying, he's advancing conspiracy hypotheses, not theories. And this is just the way that science progresses.
We are not.
Sure. I'm okay with, let's see how stupid Brett gets, because Brett has said some wildly stupid shit. But pointing out that it is possible that hospitals, through creating antibiotic resistant diseases, might kill more people than it saves is kind of stupid. But is it worth researching? Absolutely. Because you need to have these like broad systemic analyses. Now, Brett is probably about to say something stupid that's going to make me eat some crow here in a second, but I'm going to read a super chat first. Grassroots Hegemon for 5, and thank you for your membership donations yesterday. Says the amount Sargon confidently talks about the Aristotle when he hasn't read the Nicomachean Ethics makes me want to end it all. Yep. And I haven't read the Nicomachean Ethics either, but guess what? I have them right here. The 11 virtues of Aristotle: courage, temperance, liberality, magnificence, magnanimity, ambition, truthfulness, wittiness, friendliness, modesty, righteous indignation. And what I would say is that I know that there are vices where you don't have these virtues. You have these virtues too little, and you have these virtues too much. And I also know that at least one or two of these are not translated directly into modern English correctly. Like one of these exclusively has to do with sex. It could be temperance. Temperance, when I think about it, I relate it to like alcohol and drugs. But temperance, I think, in the Nicomachean Ethics is exclusively about sex, where people who are like prudish or asexual, that's viewed as like a kind of vice. And then people who are hedonistic, STD spreading, degenerate, sex having freaks, that's a different version of sex. So yeah. So I know I am as guilty of Sargon of not reading the Nicomachean Ethics, but I'm also not so stupid as to pretend that I understand these concepts wholly. I just reference them because I think it's a good starting point. And I hope that you read the Nicomachean Ethics.
Going to advance conspiracy theories. We will advance conspiracy hypotheses.
They can spend 20 or 30 minutes waffling on about a subject, about like Peterson did with you actually when you were discussing excess deaths, right, and COVID. And then when you said to him, oh, so you're like, but you're suggesting the vaccines cause the deaths, right? That's what is the clear inference from what you're saying. But he said, well, no, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying I know, I'm just saying we need to look into it. But he, in any other sentence, he can kind of switch between the strong version of the claim where it's very clear. He's suggesting the vaccines are more dangerous than the illness. And then if pushed, he'll retreat back to, well, I said, I'm not claiming that I know that. And Brett Weinstein and others will do the same thing where they'll go on this big, long conspiracy. Like he suggested that the October 7th attacks were potentially like a kind of psyop by Goliath, this like, hidden force to cause disagreements amongst the COVID dissidents, right? Because they were getting too powerful.
There's something that I would call the coalition slicer dicer working.
Yeah, Brett needs to stop smoking pot. Like honestly, whenever he talks, I just hear like a 50 or 60-year-old smoking pot, and he thinks he's a little bit smarter than he is. And by the way, Brett and Eric Weinstein are intelligent people. I just think that they have Dunning-Kruger where they think they're smarter than they are.
On us. And what it does, let's say that you have a group of people who have found each other and they have come to understand how to interact with each other, and they have established bonds of trust over their growing sense-making surrounding COVID, right? You have the COVID dissidents who are realizing that they're all seeing pieces of the puzzle, and then they pool those pieces and they say, oh my God, here's what the larger puzzle looks like. And they are empowered and they hold meetings and they become an important force on the landscape, because as the population wakes up to the fact that something was done to it that was unholy, these people have all been seen to offer pieces of the truth along the way. That is a very powerful force.
God, I hate that. Oh. Okay. Why was I born? Just to suffer? Okay. Brett is a Pacific Northwest pothead. Okay. He taught at a progressive lefty college for a prolonged period, and then a bunch of progressives with baseball bats were running around in the parking lot trying to bash his head in because he protested the fact that white people, I think he's Jewish, but white people were asked to stay home from school for one day to show solidarity with people of color. And Brett, as a Jew who thinks that that's creepy and weird, didn't stay home. And then a bunch of progressive students started being like, let's bash the fash, even though they're talking about bashing a slightly different lefty. Right? That's Brett Weinstein's origins into social media, as far as I understand. When he first went on Joe Rogan, he talked about effectively like a nonprofit, volunteer-based think tank that him and a bunch of other really smart people got into that were trying to revolutionize the way that people perceive government and culture so they can create the next great steps of humanity. And he talked about that passionately and earnestly. Since his explosion into anti-SJW pop culture phenomena, I have not heard about that project anywhere near as much. But it's unsurprising to me that he is trying to create a heterodox movement of internet schizophrenics who are skeptical about the vaccine program, who are then going to revolutionize the world's understanding of the government, because effectively that's been his project the entire time. And I think that Brett, if he's not doing marijuana, then he is like 2 steps away from a schizophrenic and psychotic break. And if he is doing marijuana, he needs to stop. That's my evaluation of Brett Weinstein.
That force is fiercely divided over the interpretation of what took place on October 7th in Israel. And this has...
Kill me now. What did he just say? What did he just say? Brett, what the fuck did you just say?
That force is fiercely divided over the interpretation of what took place on October 7th.
Maybe because they're internet schizophrenics constantly looking for a conspiracy theory and you're indulging them? Is that why? Is that why they're fiercely divided? Is that why they think that Israel planned the intentional slaughter of 1,200 of its own citizens as a casus belli in order to invade Gaza and the West Bank? Holy shit, I hate this. Okay. All right. These got, okay. Some of this is very well deserved criticism. Some of the criticism leveraged by Stephen and these guys is very well deserved. I hate to admit it, but it's true.
In Israel. And this has impacts across the globe. It has impacts on the U.S. presidential election. It has impacts on our understanding of U.S. entanglements abroad generally. And my concern is,
Old School says Peterson has also said ecological developments and how it interacts with economics. I don't know if that's a criticism or if that's a steelman of Jordan Peterson, Old School, but I would say that the analysis of communism and its like sociological effects from Solzhenitsyn, it would be partially economic, right? Because we're talking about the competition between socialist and communist and capitalist theories.
Divide and conquer is a famously ancient strategy. Mm-hmm. My guess is we would find the formulation of it in many different traditions. Obviously, Napoleon knew about it.
This is happening says that's a wild stretch to change what ecology means. I agree. And I think Jordan Peterson deserves criticism if that's what he did.
But surely Sun Tzu is going to have things to say about it. But divide and conquer in an information landscape might look very much like a an ongoing slicer-dicer operation that simply tears coalitions apart so that they are never capable of making any meaningful change, which is, after all, I think the
Sorry, I need to hear that again.
might look very much like an ongoing slicer-dicer operation that simply tears coalitions apart so that they are never capable of making any meaningful change, which is, after all, I think the Goliath's purpose.
It's a very
Everybody has conspiracy theories whenever free people freak out and break apart in a coalition. But the truth is that freedom and having the capacity to have multiple perspectives on a topic is one of our rights and privileges living in a free society. And the truth is that people are just going to fucking disagree. Like, I'm sure that psychological operations and social media exist to try to fracture our understanding of the world. I'm sure there's intentional operators who are pushing hyperbolic narratives in order to intentionally fracture the American zeitgeist, but it's also just the product of a free society.
very silly conspiracy theory, a very narcissistic one as well, right? But he can then say, no, I'm not saying that's the case, but I've just noticed a lot of things that, don't line up. And it's not like they wouldn't do that kind of thing. And then if his fans are pushed on it, they'll say, well, he didn't say, right, that he was actually doing that. So this like dropping
Sorry. I'm still half listening to the content. But this is an awesome comment. Sacred Snow says, I suspect you should stay in your lane, JBP, instead of attaching your plot to pseudoscience guesses. Yes, sure. But this is funny. Wowman542 says, I've read 200 Batman comics, so let me tell you why democracy is cringe and monarchy is based. So, wow, man, I read the first half of that sentence and I immediately had like a flashbang schizophrenic break. Technically, hold on, let me pull this up because you guys can make fun of Jordan. You have my permission to make fun of Jordan Peterson for him stretching every book he's ever read as an ecological analysis. So this is funny. Because if you read 200 Batman comics, are you not studying the individual in relation to friends, family, neighbors, school, and work? Are you not studying Batman, Bruce Wayne's interactions with parents and friends, local governments, mass media, and extended family? Are you not talking about his impact with political systems, culture, social norms, and economic systems? So, if you've read 200 Batman comics, indeed, are you not as much as an ecological analyzer as Jordan Peterson? Are you not just as well read? That's fucking awesome. That's good. That's good. If you've read 200 comic books, you know as much about ecological development as Jordan Peterson does.
in of strategic disclaimers. And it kind of fits as well with the lack
Sorry. Christian Blair says gain of function. Thank you. That's the term that I missed.
of desire to discuss specific details, because you can say, well, I don't know those actual details, but the overall point is valid. So, but I think this partly relates to people who are trying to present themselves as like scientific authorities, or like, kind of.
LB says, why should we not experiment on beagles when you eat hamburgers? What's the difference? Cows are fucking retarded. And sorry, I used the R slur. Sorry, Ken. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Jesus. Sorry, Commander Haircut. Cows are dumb as shit, and they're large, and they exclusively transition grass into meat. So it seems like they almost serve the biological purpose of being prey of carnist animals. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have some level of social intelligence or some level of kindness or gentleness in their stuff. So I actually would like to revolutionize the agricultural industry to be more humane. for the euthanasia of cows to be more humane. And I also wouldn't mind also like lab grown meat. When it comes to beagles, I just think dogs are some of the most socially intelligent creatures on the planet. So that's what it is. I don't like torturing socially intelligent creatures. I know pigs are also supposed to be pretty smart and emotionally intelligent, but pigs are also disgusting. Old School says, Connor, why are you so obsessed with IQ? It's a measurement no one can point to what it actually measures. Plus, it varies in an individual. It's useful in understanding INT, but it's not the end all. I never said it was the end all. What? And by the way, I don't even know what that has to do. What correlates with IQ? IQ, or intelligence quotient, is an estimate of intelligence and has been shown to correlate with a variety of factors, both genetic and environmental. Academic performance and professional attainment. Higher IQ in childhood is linked to better academic performance and future professional attainment. Training performance, openness to experience, brain structure, longevity, and income. So if there is a metric that correlates with income, longevity, brain structure, openness to experience, training performance, and academic performance and professional achievement, why wouldn't you be interested in that? What's your problem, bro? Why don't you like IQ?
Guru-ish figures. So I don't know if it comes up as much in the kind of influencer space.
Yeah, definitely. So I have one, I think that maps on pretty clean list. I call it, my name for this is debate edging. And the description I have for this is when you constantly stack.
Oh, I like that we're moving into different concepts. I do like this.
Descriptive claims, one over another, that are clearly leading in a certain prescriptive direction, but you never actually verbalize that prescription, causing other people to attack you on a prescriptive claim that you've never made, allowing you to refute their arguments without addressing the obvious implications of what you're saying.
Tucker Carlson does this all the time. Candace Owens. I'm repeating their names, so God please allow dissident right-wing people to please see this segment. They are so guilty of this. It's infuriating. Tucker Carlson never makes, well, not never, but he rarely makes prescriptive claims about the state of Israel or the deep state or whatever. He just does a bunch of arguments by implication. Same thing with Candace Owens. I think it's an intentional strategy on their part where Lauren Southern is guilty of this too. Lauren Southern is wildly guilty of this. Who was the other person who did that? Fuck, I hate him. I hate him so much. What's his name? The Distributist. The Distributist does this shit all the time. In the way that you can call these people out, which I have done so. I did it to Lauren. I did it to Distributist. I don't have the ability to do this to Candace Owens, but if I could, I would. And I don't have the ability to do this to Tucker Carlson. But you ask them to make prescriptions. You say, okay, you've given us half a dozen descriptive arguments that I disagree with. It sounds like you're implying X. Can you please make a prescriptive claim? And what every single one of these freaks do is they run away screaming from making any kind of prescriptive element. And I think they're all ideological cowards when it comes to that. Now, of course, when it comes to Lauren Southern back in her Ethnonat days, and when it comes to Distributist and Ethnonat days, publicly proclaiming ethno-nationalist, segregationist, race, realist perspectives is going to get you banned from social media. So I understand why they're in their own self-interest, they're not making prescriptive claims, but I do view it as a form of intellectual cowardice. If you truly believe what you're saying, that we are in an existential crisis for the future of the white race, probably, then what's more important? Your ability to make a few $100,000 on YouTube, or alerting the white race of its imminent destruction? And that's where I view a lot of these people as like grifters as well, where they ultimately don't believe their own bullshit. Because if they believe their own bullshit, they would be acting in an existential crisis way, and they often don't. They just make tons of money, party with their friends, and hang out. You know, they do what everybody else is doing while race grifting. Anyways, I need to use the restroom. So I'm actually going to watch a part of this, and then I'm gonna go get some water. I have to leave soon, which is very unfortunate, but I want to see who they describe.
So somebody will say Peterson is relentless at this. Women are really bad in the workplace, and when they have makeup, they distract men. And the only reason
Oh, that's a straw man, you fucking loser. I love you, Steve, but that's a fucking straw man.
women go to work is because they want to sexually appeal to older men and find mates and blah, blah, blah. And you hear all of this in all of the audience.
Everybody socializes because they want sexual access, but okay.
And you are all hearing like, geez, women need to not be in the workplace. But when you try to
No, Jordan Peterson would never say that women didn't need to be in the workplace. That total fucking straw man.
attack them on that, it's like a phantom prescription. You're like, so you're saying women shouldn't work? Like, well, I've never said that at all. And then all those fans say, oh, I've never said that at all. He didn't. That's right. He didn't say that. You're totally attacking him for no reason. Kathy.
Nah, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. The whole point, the whole point that Jordan Peterson was making wasn't that women don't need to work. It's that and by the way, people made fun of him so much for this fucking take. He was saying that the rules of the sexual marketplace are totally in flux right now, which they are. They're totally in flux. This was before Me Too. Give me 1 second. My fucking dog, who I love, has been scratching at the door for 5 minutes. Fuck. I love my dogs. I love them a lot, but I swear to God, I need a doggy door inside my house. Thank you, baby. I'm supposed to be done in 30 minutes, right? 1 and 2. Oh, I have more time then. Okay. Can I go until 1? No, 12:30. Okay, got it. Love you. Anyways. So this was before Me Too. And so what was going on was that there were behaviors that were being labeled as toxic that had been common for the past 100 years, which is effectively there's 2 or 3 places where you spend your time. 8 hours per day, ideally, you're asleep. 8 hours per day, you're at work. And then if this dog scratches at the door, I'm going to freak the fuck out. Oh my God. Give me a second. Yes, can I help you? Oh my God. I'm going to kill these dogs. I love them. I love them so much, but I'm going to kill them. Sit down and shut up. Now. Thank you. As I was saying, over the past 100 years, it was generally accepted that men and women would socialize and fraternize in the workplace and socialize and fraternize after work because you spend 8 hours a day at work and you spend 8 hours a day at home. And then the rest of the time, you're probably getting ready for work or getting ready for home or you're doing domestic responsibilities. And so there was a very high chance that you would meet your partner by socializing and fraternizing at work and also socializing and fraternizing with work friends immediately after work. Well, what happened in the past 2 decades is because men were wildly inappropriate and they did shit like constantly hit on women or make gross sexual jokes or, continue to harass women in order to go on dates with them after they'd already said no, is we've developed HR culture. And HR culture is human resources, where effectively what they've done is they said, anytime you make any kind of sexual suggestion for liability purposes, people can complain about you to somebody who has the power to fire you. And this has chilled the social fraternization between the sexes and the genders. Now, truth be told, I think if you're socially astute and pretty smart, then you can know when somebody is interested in partying with you, with fraternizing with you, with going out for drinks, with having fun. You can typically figure that out if you're like a pretty socially intelligent person. And so as a result, like most normies are still able to chat up people at work without getting in trouble with HR. But it's also chilled the sexual interactions that were common, 10, 20 years ago. So to strawman that as, well, we're in flux because of the pre-Me Too sexual environment, and we are in flux because of HR, arguing that Jordan Peterson was saying that women shouldn't work at all, I feel is fucking insane. And I'm surprised that Destiny used that as an example.
is it Kathy Newman, or am I making that name up?
Kathy Newman. Yeah, she's the
when
reporter.
she did.
World-renowned GeoHound says, I cannot understand your affinity for these idiots like Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson isn't an idiot. Like world-renowned GeoHound, no offense. I think you've been hanging out with fucking idiots who think Jordan Peterson is an idiot. They are literally malicious, deceptive, bad actors that push propaganda and use propaganda tactics. Fuck them. Nope. Disagree. Massive disagree. I think I think you've been hanging out with people who don't understand Jordan Peterson.
Hated him. That was a trap that she kept falling into over and over again, because she was trying to attack what were the obvious implications, and the implications that all of his fans believe, but he never actually makes the prescriptive claim. And so it's very difficult. You have to ask him, like, well, what should we do? Although he'll always say, well, I don't know. He'll always say that, even though the whole audience has already been led there. There's a big like catch. There's a big heuristic, or a klaxon should blare in your mind when this happens. When somebody is constantly doing that, but it only ever goes in one direction, and they never provide the counter, that should be a huge indicator that they are bullshitting you, right? There are times when I'm not an expert on anything, and I'll guess. I'm like, I don't know. I don't actually know the science on like this particular thing. It could be that trans people are better at sports, or that trans people are worse at sports. But if somebody says that, and then they don't give the other side, right? Like, it could be that trans people have a huge advantage. I'm not sure. But it could also be that like the percentage of people that go into sports is so low, and that these people are likely to transition earlier, and maybe the type, whatever. Like, if you don't even give the other side, but you only give one side, and you are always caveating to always argue in just one side, then it's
LB. College kids do crazy college shit. Okay. Walking around in a parking lot with baseball bats looking for your fucking professor so you can beat the shit out of them is not lol college kids doing crazy shit. That's called aggravated assault in the state of Florida. If you're carrying a weapon and you find someone and you say, I'm going to beat the fuck out of you within an inch of your life, that's a felony. As a cop, I'll take you to prison. And a judge might look at you and be like, oh, you're a cute college kid. You'll get, 6 months suspended sentence. Okay. Yeah, that happens. You know what happens to hood rats who do that repeatedly? They go to jail for like 5 to 10 years at a time. So don't, LB, I love you, but you piss me off so much consistently. And I know that's entertaining for chat. So I invite you to keep coming back to piss me off. But no, walking around in a parking lot with a fucking baseball bat looking for your professor is fucking psycho unhinged bullshit. And anybody with an IQ higher than fucking 70 should know that that's dumb and can result in a severe prison sentence. Imagine if they actually did find him and beat the fuck out of him. If they did beat the shit out of somebody with a baseball bat, that's aggravated battery. That's like 3 to 5 years, depending on the damage they do. They could have gone to prison for a very long time.
bullshit. The caveat isn't there to responsibly tailor the message. The caveat is there so that you never have to defend the obvious conclusion.
Yes. And I think like
No. Okay. We're gonna look at women. Okay. We're gonna be sexist. Women's professional attire images. Okay. High heels, lift your legs, and they make your butt look better. Okay? There is no reason that women should wear high heels besides making their butt look better. Okay? That's a sexual signal. Having clothing that emphasizes your hips is also a sexual signal. Now, this is very moderate dress, so I'm not trying to criticize these people, but I'm saying that these are subconscious sexual signals. Okay? Then same thing with, let's go, here we go, with things that emphasize the chesticles. Okay? The reason why you emphasize your chesticles is because you want people to look at your chesticles. Okay? Then this thing too, this like half, staring right into the camera while having your mouth, slightly open, et cetera, et cetera. This is like a subconscious sexual signal as well, where you're looking at something directly, and then the mouth partially open is supposed to be like a symbol of desire, right? That's what it is. And then there's a line of argumentation as well that when it comes to male professional attire, clothing, that the suit jacket will sometimes have padding or it will be very tight in the shoulders, and the emphasis is on the shoulders because male sexual signaling often has to do with emphasizing a high shoulder to width ratio, which corresponds with testosterone, by the way. And then also, there's not so much like an emphasis on the penis, I guess, because penises are not that attractive. But the truth is that suits are designed for men in order to obscure like belly fat, which could be like a sign of unhealthiness, and to maximize shoulders. So these are subconscious sexual signals that we have put into our clothing because we're trying to communicate attractability to whoever we're trying to attract. If you're gay, then you're trying to attract men. And if you're women, then, and if you're straight, you're trying to attract women. And then if you're a woman, same thing, right? And so the point that people even bother denying that there's subconscious sexual signals related to makeup and clothing is fucking absurd to me. Like, it's so obvious because the other option, by the way, Saudi Arabian clothing, this is another option that we can do. We can just wear amorphous clothing. And you know why Saudis wear this? It's not because they don't have sex. Saudi people clearly have sex. But the reason why they wear this clothing is because it's hot as shit. That's why they wear this clothing. If they had an option to wear something that emphasizes their shoulders, which, by the way, this guy's like cloak emphasizes his shoulders, then they will put that into their style of dress. And then it's the same thing with women. The reason why the burqa exists is because, or the, what do they call it? It's not just the burqa. Burqa clothing. The reason why this outfit exists is explicitly in Islam is to reduce the amount of sexual appeal that women can have in public. Because they view that as like a woman's attractiveness, her beauty should only be for her husband. And so they would look at this and call her a whore. That's the point of what, well, not all of them, right? You know, like Saudis or Persians or whatever, they would actually be like, oh, that's actually quite fetching. That's actually beautiful, right? But women who dress like this would call this woman a whore because she's showing off her face. Her breasts are enhanced by her dress. You can see her hips very clearly. Same thing with this, right? Like Frogan, for instance. She has, no offense to her, she's a hijabi, right? But that a lot of Muslims would view this as a provocative pose. And some of them might even criticize this as immodest dress. Okay? So anyways, the whole point of this, that was like a 5-minute, 10-minute rant. But the whole point that Jordan Peterson was making is that he didn't even know Me Too was coming because I'm pretty sure this was before Me Too. He was saying that HR culture is disrupting the way that men and women operate in the workplace. We don't know fully what the rules are. And as a result, we're having all these negative social interactions. It's fucking true. And fuck you for not understanding that. Grassroots for $20. Thank you for your donation. The Weinstein brothers have the worst case of undeserved main character syndrome I've ever witnessed. True. Although I did learn about the narrative of Passover from Eric Weinstein, and I actually really appreciated him breaking down the themes of Passover. Anyways, back to the content.
Like, this is not exactly that, but it does apply that Hassan interviewed, we covered it on the podcast, the interview with the Houthi pirate guy, right? And it was framed initially very much like, we are talking to this guy because he's involved with this movement.
Bro, are we about to have a Houthi rebel on stream? Yes, brother. What do you mean? Excuse me. Of course I'm about to have a... I'm a journalist, okay? This is journalism.
But then...
So hold on. Old school asked an important question. Did Brett Weinstein actually call October 7th a false flag op? If he did, fuck him. No, that's not what he did. What he was saying is that the false flag narrative, which appeals to skepticism, is being inflamed by bad actors who are taking multiple perspectives on October 7th in order to break the skeptic community.
After getting like pushback on it, he's just a young guy from Yemeni. Like he said, that he's not.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know if he's a Houthi or not personally. Like, he didn't say any of that shit. He just said he's a teenager in Yemen.
And then at the same time, there's the argument that the US hasn't prescribed the Houthis at that time as a terrorist organization. So there's like these layers.
Yeah, there's like 7 different arguments that all overlap.
Of like kind of retreating from the argument. But like if you watch the initial framing, like the interview that we did, it's very clear. It's being presented that we are interviewing this guy who the media is demonizing because he, is giving us an insight into the Houthis' perspective. But then it's just like, no, I just talked to.
I'm catching up with chat's reaction to me doing the Batman analysis, and Wowman 542 says JBP's next lecture, the Jungian meaning of Power Girl's boob window outfit. Oh fuck. NY Northman says they were talking about Jordan Peterson concept regarding climate change, not a speciality of physics and whatnot. For sure. If Jordan Peterson exaggerated the amount of books he's actually read about the environment and ecology, then that's very cringe. Oh. LB, if you hate dogs, that's on you. I'm not going to explain it to you. Okay. Adonic Treadmill says, good morning, guys. This is one of my favorite throwback vids. I shouldn't be awake, but my kitchen staff are helpless children. I'm sorry, brother. Grassroots says pigs are dope. Pigs are dope. They're just also nasty, disgusting, dirty fucking creatures. Yeah, General So says, he's saying as long as you craft dogs into a delicious, dumb, ugly form, then it's fine, relatively speaking.
A Yemen guy about like Luffy and hamburgers. Like other people said he's a pirate, and he mentioned like talking to the captives and all that kind of thing.
Does he know what has happened to any of the crews? Like, I heard they tried cat. Having a good time? Are they okay?
He's saying they've all tried caught, including the captain of the ship.
Oh yeah, Hassan Piker Frogan, Noah Sampson, and Mike from PA. I've seen them all be guilty of debate edging or point edging. 100%.
That he went on. He's saying that the vibes are immaculate.
No fucking way.
Grassroots says, if you've ever seen a newborn piglet, it will actually melt your soul. Sure. And I try to minimally eat pigs. Number 1, because they're dirty. Number 2, because they're dirty. Number 3, because the babies are cute. Number 4, because I know they're socially intelligent animals.
He's saying that they win over the crews on these ships, and they like win them over with their charm, and they make them hate America and the US government.
That's so funny.
But that's other people layering things in. So you can have it both ways, that you're doing the controversial thing, but then you're kind of like, I'm not doing that. And it's kind of like mutually contradictory. But it seems to work. Like you throw like loads of disclaimers and people can just pick the one that suits like the situation.
Yeah. I mean, this is something we see also in the tweeting from these influencers, where they don't actually say the thing, but what they do is they profess like the.
This is why I like being a conservatarian, centrist, liberal, whatever the fuck you want to call me. Is because you can just say your worldview, because your worldview is the norm. The worldview, relatively speaking, is don't be a racist fucking asshole. The norm is mixed economy capitalism is actually probably better than socialism and communism. The norm is that liberal democracy is preferable to fascism and authoritarian communism. So I actually I'm a huge fan of being normal.
Commenting on the wildfires or some major events, and they're saying that they're very confused. They don't understand.
Yeah, Christian Blair says Connor needs to write these down. These would actually be more shit to argue about than Men in Black. Yeah, sure, I'll write these down actually.
And things aren't adding up, but they highly suspect that, and everything about it is leading their followers to make the obvious conclusion. So you can read the replies, and all the replies are like, yeah. Oh my God, the government's covering up the UFOs. The DEI caused the Wi-Fi. You name it, right? The obvious conclusion is clearly seen by all of their followers, but they never said it. They just they just expressed confusion in trying to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah. And it's funny because intuitively we all know what's happening because I'll just do this to other people, right? I used to hang out with you in LA and I know you lived before. Isn't it weird that you've always lived?
Okay. AKA Batasui says Jordan was saying that women in the workforce were depressed and in the wrong place, but he was talking about the fringes. Not okay. Yes. However, what he was also describing is the fact that women pursue these like high level careers like lawyers and shit, and then they don't find purpose in it in the long term, similar to how men often have existential crises when they're workaholics. And so what he was saying is that part of his practice was encouraging women and giving them psychological tools in order to succeed in the workplace, but also telling them to prioritize things that actually make them content and happy. And that the whole goal of feminism should not be to turn women into dysfunctional workaholic men. And so he wasn't saying women shouldn't be in the workforce. He was saying that women should prioritize things like family and community and well-being and connection and all that kind of shit, which is true of not just women, but also of men. And he acknowledges that whenever he talks about the fucking topic. So Short Stack Goblin says Connor simping for JP doesn't let him see the truth. Fuck off. I love you too, Short Stack Goblin, but fuck you. I've consumed and understand more JBP content than all you fucking DGG fucking rock throwing dickheads ever will. Sacred Snow says, I know why Connor will only tell us a few handpicked stories from his family. He knows we'll find out JBP is his dad if he tells more. No, JBP is my internet dad. JBP is my internet dad.
So within 2 months.
Connor's Michael's Vic is coming out. No, it's not. I will never defend dogfighting ever.
Miles of a grade school. Isn't that just kind of weird? As soon as you say that, everybody's like, "Wait, what the fuck do you mean?" Wow, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying it's kind of weird, That's it. And it's like everybody knows intuitively, everybody understands intuitively what's happening. But this fucking thing drives me insane when people do this.
Just asking questions.
On the subject of just asking questions, I've got a close to home example I think applies, and we'll see if you agree or not. So I was listening to the Bridges podcast that you did with Dr. K, right? And we did a 3-part series on Dr. K. Okay. And I understand as well in that context that, that podcast is not really.
Grasser says, dude, your dog scratches at your door. Hobbs has literally dragged a deer he killed into my house when I was in a suit going to meet a customer. The puppies are fine. Lol. Yeah, but they don't stop because my dogs are spoiled. So they don't stop scratching.
Like a challenging debate format, right? It's more a discussion. So there are probably things that you would, might push back in other occasions. But nonetheless, so I was listening to it, and I'm more critical of Dr. K, it's fair to say, but he mentioned that his coaching program, right, which he's very clear in all our contexts, is not therapy. And he mentioned that
lol, obviously it's therapy.
They have looked at their internal metrics and it gets better.
Melody, that's incorrect. So Connor says the argument is Peterson never gives a description for a solution. He just leads you down the route of maybe an issue, but never goes further. So you can't attack him or the thought. I'm calling bullshit. When it comes to solutions, you could literally just look at all the 12 rules for life shit. Those are all exclusively solutions on how human beings, men and women, should orient themselves for life. When it comes to chaos and order and putting your life into order, when it comes to being temperate and patient and letting people explore and become bigger people, he has prescriptions out the ass when it comes to psychology. When it comes to sociological questions like, should women participate in the workforce, he doesn't like the presumption that everybody knows the rules. And that conversation, by the way,
results.
Let's go ahead and take a look and make sure that my chronology is correct. Jordan Peterson, Vice interview, women in the workplace. 7 years ago. That was 2018. When was the Me Too movement? Well, the original is 2006. 2017 was the beginning. So this was exactly correlative with Me Too. So you can't tell me that everybody knows the rules of workplace sexual dynamics and everybody is happy with it and knows exactly how to conduct themselves, considering that Jordan Peterson did this interview talking about secondary sex characteristics being emphasized and de-emphasized in the workplace, and male-female relationships being confusing for modern people, when literally what happened was Me Too. And then, since then, 2017 through 2022, the entire fucking sociological complaint since then has been men no longer interact with women because they're too scared to do anything, because they're afraid of being accused of being predators. Which, by the way, the real answer to that is men just need to stop being pussies. But at the same time, like, that's something that I hear consistently, is that young men are scared to socially engage with women for fear of being accused of being creepy, both in the workplace and suffering workplace consequences, and also being blasted on social media. Yeah. So I disagree. Red Supreme says, JBP is an atheist Christian who can't come out and just say that. Well, Red Sparrow, I'm going to take out some heat that I have for a commenter against you as well. So my apologies before I say fuck you. I'm still going to say fuck you, though. Somebody in comments said, like, oh, Connor's just an atheist. He just doesn't, he just hasn't accepted yet. Fuck you. Okay. And the reason why is because religion is obviously pointing to the creative and ordered force of the universe. And that's consistently what it talks about when it comes to the creator God of the universe. And when it comes to the pagan gods of ancient times, they're talking about external forces outside of humanity, like war, rage, passion, art, beauty, etc. And these concepts are more eternal than the species itself. There are probably aliens who have some conception of war or anger or vengeance, because even if they don't use the same words, they understand the concept. And therefore, the concept is eternal and outside of humanity. That's what the pagan gods refer to. And so a whole bunch of mythological bullshit gets thrown on top of that, no doubt. 90 to 95% of religion is either metaphor, mythological, parables, history, all that shit, right? But to say that I or Jordan don't believe at the underlying truth that is being pointed out by religion, I'm just going to succinctly say, politely, because I love you for being a chatter and hanging out here and making a comment, I'm going to politely say to you and to the two other commenters, fuck you. So, love you, but fuck you. Hoach says, Jordan may not be an idiot, but he does a damn fine job of convincing people otherwise. Fuck my chat today, okay? Seriously, you guys are pissing me off.
Therapy, and he mentioned, like, they can't release it, it's based on confidential metrics, but he's had conversations with the American Psychiatric Association, and he was kind of horrified by how bad their outcomes were. Right now, he also added in, then, now they have a clinical subpopulation, so there's other things, right, that make that different. But when I heard that, I was like, right, but you've added in the disclaimers, but what you've also implied is, like, that your coaching program is as effective, if not much more effective, than most other forms of therapy. But you've also added in, that's not what you're claiming. So, like, if I raise the critique, people will say, oh, but he said, they are dealing with subclinical populations, so we can't really compare the outcomes. But the very strong, like, implication you get, and from the surrounding conversation with Kyla, where you're talking about, the lack of kind of quality control within American therapy session, is,
I hate you guys. I love you, but I hate you. Sten Franklin says, Jordan Peterson can't just be an idiot, but he is either a sophisticated or a terrible communicator, which should be disqualifying for a public intellectual. Wrong. If you have an IQ over 100, he's actually quite easy to understand, which all of you guys understand Jordan Peterson because you all have 3,000 IQs. Everyone is fucking brilliant here, so you all understand exactly what he's saying when he says it. You just need to watch the content. instead of watching Destiny describe the content or watching people who dislike religion describe the content, just go watch the original content. It's actually quite dry. Like when you watch the some of my favorite Jordan Peterson stuff, I think it's at Harvard. It might be Toronto or whatever. But Jordan Peterson Harvard lecture. Yeah, it's not going to be Harvard. College lecture. University lecture. Anything with this background where he has like cinder block and he's walking around is fucking fire. Okay. There's 20 minutes of dry bullshit. And then he'll just say something where you're like, oh, fuck. And it'll like reorient the way that you think about the world. So don't listen to Steven describe Jordan Peterson. Don't listen to Vice News describe Jordan Peterson. Don't listen to anybody else talk about what he talks about. Just listen to him. And if you have a higher than 100 IQ, you'll understand perfectly what he's saying. He's verbose. He's dry. He's a college lecturer. Okay? But some of this stuff is actually straight fucking fire. Also, it makes for some pretty good memes. Like Jordan Peterson, the rat. Oh my God. I hope they have like a 1-minute clip. This rat is this. Rat is this. The rats are all like this. The rat goes like this. So the rat's like this. The normal rat is like this. That's the normal rat. Like this, like this. It sniffs. It's like this for quite a while. He's like this. And then maybe he sniffs. You are now a normal rat. Rat. And I don't think I've watched the specific one, but I've watched enough JBP to know that he's talking about like the fight or flight psychological conditioning of a lot of living creatures. I know that's what he's talking about. But there's just like random memes like that where he's like, if I was Hitler, this is what I would do. Sure, kill the Jews, wipe them out, whatever. It's this like Jordan Peterson out of context is actually straight fucking fire. I love Jordan Peterson out of context. Anyways, point is, shut the fuck up. You guys are pissing me off.
Their coaching system is,
and what I mean is, don't shut the fuck up. That way you can give me spicy comments that I interact with for the audience's entertainment. So go ahead and keep talking.
Is great and super effective and has much better quality control things, but you also get, the disclaimer that I'm not making that claim. So do you think that counts?
I think it's a fair criticism. I feel like mental health and coaching stuff is really weird because it's one of those areas where...
Hold on. Gen X says, no wonder the legislators are such pervs, definitely our fault. No. You are insufficiently complex in your analysis. Okay? And I do have to leave in a moment. Sending subconscious sexual signals is not bad. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go full screen. We should continue to watch this, by the way. This is actually great content. I might unironically continue to watch this tomorrow, but I have to go to cousin camp, okay? So, Gen X. Me shaving my head, the reason why I know that I can shave my head is because I have a decent head shape. The reason why I grow my beard is because I can show you that I have masculine vitality, okay? There's plenty of men who can't grow a decent beard, and it's because they don't have sufficient testosterone in order to grow it. The reason why I work out, partially just because I want to look good, but the reason why I want to look good is because I want to emphasize my shoulders and my arms, and I want to show that I'm healthy and all that kind of stuff. Now, I have a wife, so I've already attracted my partner. So at this point, it's mostly just for health. But there's a decent way where people have a feedback mechanism within their psychology where they want to be viewed as attractive. So I'm not calling women sluts, which is also, by the way, the straw man of Jordan Peterson. I'm not calling them sluts for showing off secondary sexual characteristics. It's not slutty to want to be perceived as attractive and then have the opposite sex or the same sex, if you're gay, find you attractive so they interact with you so you can find your partner. It's not negative. It's not degenerate. It's not socially destructive to want to signify sexual health in order to attract a partner. That's pro-generative. That's pro-social. That's actually good in some ways. Where it jumps the shark is where you show off your secondary sexual characteristics to the extent that you're distracting from the environment. Gross, buddy. You're distracting from work by showing off your sex stuff, because then you're not clearly there for work and just happen to be looking for your partner. You're just trying to get laid, right? And so that's where it can be degenerate. It can be degenerate, but it's not necessarily degenerate. Sabri says, I agree. Models and photos are sending sexual signals. I've actually worked in an office area and not that many women dress like that. Only the ones that are trying to send sexual signals. So don't. Sure. And there are women, you can see women who are already married who stop doing the secondary sex signals, not because they're not attractive, but because they already found their partner. They don't need to show off their tits. They don't need to show off their ass. They don't need to wear high heels. They don't need to wear tight clothing because they already found their partner. Uriel says, so women must be silenced in order to not open their mouth. Are you dumb? I hope that's sarcastic. Based. Okay. Sex sells. What's new? That wasn't the point. That wasn't the point at all. You guys are being obtuse and it's pissing me off. Short Stack Goblin says, I don't like this weird office erotica. It's not weird. You live in it every single day. Gen X says, is Connor making excuses for why Trump wears shoulder pads? Yes. Trump unironically wears suits in order to emphasize, like the reason why. Let's go ahead and take a look at a Trump cartoon. Trump himself is actually quite frumpy and dumpy. And he makes up for his frumpy dumpiness by covering it up with a hairpiece, because I think the dude has at minimum thin hair and at maximum he's probably bald. So we know he wears a hairpiece, and he does so in order to emphasize the fact that he's vital enough to still grow hair. Then he also wears suits in order to hide the fact that he's kind of fat, right? He's got a fupa and he's got a fat ass, right? So Donald Trump, golf outfit, fat. So the reason why he's walking around in this is because and the reason why he pulls his pants up so high is to try to maximally hide his gut. And the reason why people, took this photo in order to make fun of Trump is because they're showing off his gut. And he has a fat dump truck of a butt. Good for him in that regard, right? But the whole point is that there are subconscious and conscious sexual signals, even in something as asexual as Donald Trump's outfits. And then not just that, look at Donald Trump cartoons. I know I'm belaboring the point, but I don't care because I just want you to acknowledge it as true. The ones that make fun of him show him off as being more fat, having a bigger belly, having smaller shoulders, et cetera, et cetera. But where's the ones that show off how cool and masculine he is? What is it? Ben Garrison? Donald Trump, Ben Garrison cartoons. So we already see the ones that make fun of him are fat, but what do the ones that praise him do? Shoulders, thin waist, muscular physiology, flowing hair, normal body shape. Look at that. These are subconscious and conscious secondary sex signals. Same thing with Michelle. Look at this. They're making Michelle look like a butch man while they're making Melania look like feminine. You can't deny this to me. And anybody who bothers trying is a dipshit. And that's what Jordan Peterson is talking about. And to misconstrue it, I think is fucking retarded. Short Stack says they are not subconscious signals, you repressed freak. Everyone is conscious of it. No, they're not. No, they're not. I don't consciously pick out every single piece of clothing I wear. And I guarantee you that women don't put on rouge in order to be like, oh yeah, this is consciously going to make me more sexually attractive by simulating the blood flow and arousal associated with, what is it? Ovulation. I don't think that's a conscious choice. Oh, I just got here. Are you talking about the retarded JP comment where he says women are being hypocritical by wearing makeup to work? I hate you guys. You're pissing me off. You're pissing me off. Dominic Galletta says, it's how Jordan spoke of it. He didn't flesh out his take or sexual dynamics in the workplace, and it opened on him getting criticism. I don't care. That's fine. Just don't strawman it. That's literally all I'm asking for. Like you guys keep saying like the most normie lib shit. I don't know if you guys can hear me because my monitors got knocked out by my dog again. But you guys are saying the normie 80 IQ Jordan Peterson is a fucking moron lib shit in my fucking chat, and I'm reacting to you, and I hope you have a good time. Connor only eats halal. Not always. I do eat some pork, but I don't like eating pork because I know they're socially intelligent. I also roasted piglet. If you eat baby animals, I think you're a fucking freak. Sorry. LB says, for a long time, Connor, men used money to control women, made laws to deter women, etc. Sure. The sexual marketplace, what you guys call patriarchy, is absolutely associated with sex and sexual control. The question is, if you have a society that has no sex controls, but it becomes degenerate and implodes, isn't that worse than a society that has some enforced sexual norms and expectations? Hedonic says, Connor, I agree on your Peterson defense, but he has the plot as of late, no, like post-Daily Wire. Yeah, he's lost his shit. But I don't like the straw mans. Grasser says, I've met every girlfriend at work. True. That's not research, Connor. Who cares? I'm not talking about research. Tell men to stop being pussies. I agree. Basin Scott Galloway pilled. True. DD22E says, hey, I got lucky and my girl asked me out. Yeah, but if that, you are the exception, not the rule. All right, I'm going to scroll and see if there's any other, like the stream, share it with your friends, watch the VODs, comment on the VODs, and super chats and memberships if you got them. Uriel says, wouldn't that prescribe you more as a theist, a deist, rather than associating with a doctrine or specific religion, since many of the Abrahamic religions subscribe to the idea that you must follow their doctrine? Theism is a specific religion. Deism is effectively like the blind watchmaker, like God set the universe into motion. And then I don't know if there's an afterlife. I don't know if God specifically cares about his creation, but I know or believe that there's a fundamental creative force that set the universe into motion, and there's laws of order that allow us to exist. And when you follow those laws, you typically succeed. And when you don't follow those laws, your life typically sucks ass. And that's what religious people call sin. Sin is degenerate behavior that hurts you. Since Sacred Snow says, I saw you add it to the list. Prepare yourself, Connor. Dave is very mean to the point of being abrasive. Could be fun, though. Sacred Snow says he's of the mindset, fuck these people who are destroying science. They don't deserve niceness. Could be fun. Marlin or Marfin says, old Peterson is good, but his recent Jubilee appearance was embarrassing. Happens to the best of us. We all cringe. Jenik says, no way, Connor. I need my cult leader to explain it to me. Okay. Kay says, totally agree about JP. I believe so much bullshit about him, and then I spent time listening to him, and I get it now. He's some really insightful takes. There will be 20 minutes of dry bullshit in a Jordan Peterson lecture, and then he'll say one insightful thing that will actually change the way that you think about the world. Hedonic says, Destiny actually gives him props on a bunch of stuff, including the answer of what is a woman bullshit. Peterson says, one and find out. Oh, marry one and find out. Good stuff. Sure. Hutch says, Peterson claims to be a Christian, but rejects the Immaculate Conception, which is required to be Christian. He's admitted in the past that he is an atheist, but grifts on the topic to appease his base. I don't agree. I don't agree. He has that whole, like, belief is what you do. If you say that you believe something, but none of your actions align with that belief, do you believe it? World-renowned GeoHound says, I was raised Christian, went to Christian schools, and used to watch a ton of Peterson content. I loved it, consumed hundreds of hours. Then I snapped out of it. He's a malicious propagandist. Disagree. I think you're coping. Brian B says, Peterson pre-2017 is gigabase, but the last few years have broken something, and the closer you get to now, the more he comes off as unhinged. Sure. Listen, all of our parents will lose their minds slowly, and eventually so will I. I will be 60 or 70 years old, and I will be streaming, and you'll be like, damn, Connor really fucking fell off. He's losing his shit. It's going to happen. Just, you're going to have to deal with it. We all circle the drain and fall out eventually. Unort says, Connor is talking about OG Book 1, JP. Chad is talking about current book-to-movie reboot version. Oh, man. Short Stack Doglin says we have listened to JP. My favorite lecture is when he explains Hitler had a cleanliness obsession and that's why the Holocaust happened. Master communicator. It's very clearly about political corporatism and virality. World-renowned GeoHound says, yeah, you just grew way too strong of a parasocial relationship with Peterson. You're too dug in and clouded. Sorry, not Sonner. Sorry. Nope. Fuck all of you. I love you too, but fuck all of you. You're retarded. Finian Lonbar says, Christianity is the home of pedos and child rape. That's literally the only reason you have any faith. You're retarded. I can't say that, but fuck yourself. Crayon says, Valor Media Network, and by the way, I'm just answering chats because I got to run in a second. Valor Media Network says, what would it take for you to be convinced that JBP is baiting the obvious conclusions to his observations while avoiding any responsibility? Actually showing me evidence that he means that women don't belong in the workplace? Find me anything. Like that was I don't think that that's Steven's strongest argument. He can probably find me a stronger argument. Find me a prescription that he consistently reinforces that is implied by his line of questioning or reasoning that he runs away from. And I guarantee you, I'm willing to bet $100 on it. I will bet $100 that Jordan Peterson does not think that precluding women from the workplace is a reasonable response to the confusions of Me Too. I guarantee you. He might have entertained some cringe hypotheticals, but he wasn't stating that women shouldn't work. You'll never find me an example of that. I'll bet $100. Crayon says he has some works that focus on prescriptions, but never when interacting with others. He has some works that focus on prescriptions, but never when interacting with others. Why is that? Because the world's complicated and he likes to yap. Trump also likes to stand at a 45-degree angle. Yeah, probably to hide his gut. 100%. Yeah. Tiny hands. Yeah. What is Trump's makeup? Orange pancake? Yeah, it's spray tan. DD22E says Connor going on the Don Draper arc. I don't know what that means, but sure. Have you reviewed the Destiny and JBP debate yet? No. No, why haven't I? Destiny versus JBP. Yeah, we're gonna watch more of Decoding the Gurus, and then we're gonna watch the JBP one. That'll be fire, even if it's old. Old but gold. Laugh my ass off. Why'd you say it like that? Probably because it's funny. What? Why is it always a negative with you, Connor? What are you talking about? Full mandatory nudity in the workplace. I hate you. Sabri Keller says, yo, dress uniforms are 100% coded to draw the eye to shoulders and hide the chief petty officer's FUPA and all the chief petty officers have. Yep. 100%. 100%. Hedonic says, have fun touching grass, dude. Got to go do the same. Yep. We're wrapping up. No cope, only love. I feel that way about you guys too. You guys are pissing me off, but I love you. Connor at 70 will embrace sex work. I'll start an OnlyFans in my 60s. Sabri says, well, what would you call a person who avoids the consequences of their actions by going into medical-induced coma? Is that the someone who accepts the grace of God? What are you talking about? When you have a drug issue and you need to get rehabbed, you need to get rehabbed. What the fuck are you talking about? What does that have to do with the grace of God? Oliver in the Twist says, it's sad because he had amazing performances with Kathy Newman, some Aussie reporter, etc., Dyson, and seemed to get jaded over time and markedly more aggressive and nuanced. I blame the Daily Wire. I think he started hanging out. Jordan Peterson should have been hanging out with lefties and progressives and liberals so he could constantly steelman his opposition. By constantly hanging out with conservatives who agreed with 80% of what he said, he became a weaker version of himself. Melody says, Connor, have an argument with Destiny about JP. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I'll bring that up. Sorry. LB says, Connor, keep a notepad by your computer. Yep. Gen X says, oh my God, Connor doesn't even know Mad Men. I know Don Draper. I just don't know what you mean by Don Draper. I'm going to be an alcoholic. I'm going to cheat on my wife. I'm going to steal somebody's identity. I'm going to, run a successful marketing business. What about Don Draper do you think I'm doing? Conservative liberalism says JVP debates with Destiny and Zizek are some of the most commonly referenced JVP debates in these circles. Might be worth looking at that one too. I know, but with Zizek, I saw it and he did get stomped because he didn't understand socialism or communism. Grassroots 20 says, if you buggers read Jonathan Haidt, you would know you can consistently move anyone substantially to the right by putting hand sanitizer on the table. When you apply a political compass test, disorganized chairs swing left. Grassroots says, and I love you, Connor, but I won't be oiling your OnlyFans. That's fair. That's fair. He didn't do rehab. He went into a coma and cheated to quit. And if you're rich, who gives a shit? You guys are such assholes. You're like, oh, you have a heroin addiction? Well, in order to quit it, you have to suffer. How do I know that's not your perspective when it comes to homeless people? How do I already know that? Because he's rich, he quit. He quit cold turkey by going into a medically induced coma so he didn't have to have withdrawals that might have killed him. What a pussy. God, I hate this. Yeah. So what? If you're rich, who gives a shit? Good for him. I hope that I'm rich enough that, well, I mean, I don't really have that many addictions. Anyways, well, no, I spoiled Mad Men for Christian Valeris a decade after it released. All right, hold on. There was one other thing that I wanted to show you guys before I left, or I wanted to take a note on it. I forget. Jordan Peterson versus Zizek. Jordan Peterson versus Destiny. Oh, yeah. The Jonathan Haidt thing. Decoding the Gurus accuses Jonathan Haidt of being a fucking grifter. So we're going to have to watch that too. What is it? Jonathan Haidt's. Here it is. Steven Pinker. Okay, it's Steven Pinker, not Jonathan Haidt. Steven Pinker's heterodox standards when open inquiry meets race realism. Okay, so it's Steven Pinker, not Jonathan Haidt. For some reason, they look similar to me, but maybe I'm just being racist against white people. Okay. So to wrap it up, I parasocially love all of you, even though you gave me a bunch of shit today. Like the stream. It's free, and it lets other people check out the VOD. Comment in the chat. There's lots of really funny, interesting people. As much as they piss me off today, they're actually really funny and really interesting. Watch the VODs and comment below the VODs while you're watching them so that boosts them in the algorithm. Super chats if you got them. I'm going to go ahead and thank Grassroots for supporting, but also Lawson Harrison also gave a substantive donation today. So thank you kindly to Lawson Harrison and Grassroots Hegemon for the donations. And what else was I thinking? Gift memberships, become a membership, do whatever you want to do. Then Melody says, Connor, I thought the Bible teaches you to never take the easy way out. Where the fuck does it say that? What are you talking about? Find me the passage about rehab that says that you're not allowed to, get rehabilitated through medical shit. Find me that passage. No, Bakar Baridi asked me about the Chinese schizo professor. I don't know if that's going to be good content, so I kind of took it off the docket. I'm not going to lie. Jonathan Haidt versus Mark Manson. Sure, I'll write that down because I like Haidt. Haidt versus Manson debate. And did you say Manson, not Hanson? Manson. Cool, I wrote that down. All right. Pinkerton got kind of shoved sideways out of heterodox, but thank you and bye, friends. Okay. I parasocially love each and every one of you. Have a fantastic day. I'm going to go get cousin camp started. Bye for now.